The intention of justice is to see that the guilty people are proven guilty and that the innocent are freed. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome. We are taking a look at this case from a psychological perspective.
Have you guys ever tried to recreate the quote-unquote butt dials?
No, because it's not possible. They're all doing it in the middle of the night. All of them. Higgins is saying he made a butt dial. Brian Albert is saying it was a butt dial.
Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
They appear, they meaning the Alberts, McCabe's, and Higgins, appear to have kept it simple and agreed to several mantras. One of them was butt dials, and the other, I don't recall. Because when they start to add details to their renditions of what happened that night, they're completely inconsistent. Brian Higgins said his Jeep was parked in front of the house. He backed it up, he had a plow, he went into great detail, and he jokingly plowed some snow for Brian and Nicole to pull in, and then Matt and Jen, and then he V'd out and pulled in front of the house by the mailbox. I have no idea what happened to Chloe. Based on what I know, I would guess the dog is dead. I don't believe it's the dog they claim it is up in New Hampshire. We asked for proof, and all they gave was animal control vaccination records. But how did my taillight get there? How did they somehow find pieces of it broken at John's house from when I hit John's car at 5 a.m? That's the only thing I could figure out. And it was that night in July. The CERT team did not find taillight until after Proctor had the taillight.
She's got a leaky balloon knot.
You followed that up with the phrase leaks poo.
I knew in general that they were vile, but I was actually annoyed that Adam Lally preempted us bringing these messages out in cross-examination. That should have been our moment. John O'Keefe entered the garage or the house at 34 Fairview, and much sooner than later, met his demise. Based on his injuries, it looks to me like he got into a fight and fell backwards. There was not a single pathologist in either trial that didn't say the mortal wound came from falling backwards and hitting his head. That was agreed on. He had bruises on his hands. So someone in that house killed John O'Keefe. The judge was appearing to be so much more lenient with her rulings with the prosecution than she was with us. I mean, we had to fight for everything. And it seemed to be a one-way street, that there was a worry if I testified, the prosecutor, especially Brennan, he seemed to be given even more latitude than Lally was, which he shouldn't be allowed to do, but he was. So there was real risk. Same with risks putting Proctor on the stand, that we're not playing by the same rules. Brennan was just so unethical in his questioning. I felt that she had a personal animus towards me, absolutely.
Excuse me, this is funny, Ms. Reed?
I felt it very early on. And we're done here. And I went, just like that. I think it was prejudicial towards me, the defendant, that she chose to characterize my exasperation as making a joke. I had expected it, if I had to bet an appendage, had thought if I was convicted of OUI or anything, Brennan would ask for the max sentence.
Commonwealth rules for sentencing, we recommend a probation 1 year, 24D program.
So the standard that everybody else gets on a first-time OUI?
Certainly.
Okay.
We ask that you be treated no differently, no better.
So I'm happy to do it.
It was fair.
You're not used to that.
So wait, were you faking all along?
Yeah.
Can you at least be consistent?
Yeah.
And pretend you think I'm a bad person? Can you just finish the charade?
And showing solidarity, you can see them there. It's about getting justice for John O'Keefe.
There clearly is an issue of integrity.
How dare they? Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. And today, I am ecstatic to welcome to the show Loophole Lawyer. Welcome.
Well, welcome. How do we get more letters down next to your name?
Well, they're only going to have one soon. It'll all be replaced by 3 letters, hopefully, very soon. Just PhD.
Which will be PhD.
Yeah.
What's CASAC?
So that is a New York certification. It's like your certification to be a substance use counselor. Every state is a little bit different, but in New York State, that's to work with substance abuse. Very
good. I love the opening. It was interesting to hear Karen speaking with Rotten Tomato. Who was that? Rotten something?
Rotten
I never heard of
Mango.
that channel. Yeah, apparently it's pretty big. But how did you feel she came off after listening to that?
It's a great question. I was actually relieved to hear from her to answer some of these questions because I feel like, well, first off, I just feel like Karen's been consistent. My understanding of her, who she is, how she is, her responses, they're all very predictable. Not a lot of surprises in anything that she said to me, but it was nice to hear from her, nice to hear, her version of what happened and to hear about the trial and the judge. And some of that was the more interesting. Also, particular, like her discussing how she felt like as the evidence was coming in, how she was trying to make sense of how they were pulling this up. How are the cops doing this? Why are they saying one thing and reality is something different? So that was interesting. What was your take on it? What did you think?
The blame she had was a lot towards Proctor. And I have come to decide that Proctor has done nothing intentionally wrong with this entire case. But when you're in her situation at the very beginning, Proctor handed her the biggest gift at all. She should be thankful for what Proctor wrote to his friends. Now, if you're around guys or girls sometimes, but guys mainly, in their group texts, this is how we talk. We're idiots. We know this. But it doesn't mean that she's guilty. And what I love about Karen is she recognized that. She's actually very mature about being called a cunt, right? She was fine with it. And by the way, Mango Tango, I know you got 6 million subscribers, but you have to bleep out the words. We're talking about a murder here. Yet some of us are so offended by just vocal words. It shouldn't be, especially in the law. You have to say the word. One interesting thing that you played was that Karen's team wanted to bring out Michael Proctor's text messages. So, of course, you're offended by them in theory, but they're gold for you from her defense. And Lally did what they teach us. Is they technically call it workshopping. You bring out the bad parts of your case before you give the other side to do it. And that's what she was sort of upset about. Not necessarily being called a cunt. She was upset that they couldn't present it. And I get that. I get it all from a tactical standpoint. But then I almost cry at the end when I hear that Hank was reasonable. Did you get any emotional reaction to that portion of it?
I felt exactly the same way. In fact, it was interesting to hear that they had 2 teams, one side that were working on sentencing and the other that were, working on whatever was coming before that closing. Because that is exactly what my concern was. That was the debate at the time. Many of us saying, should she have an OUI? Because I just guessed that they were 100% going to throw the book at her if she was found to be guilty for drunk driving. So I was absolutely stunned also, and very interesting to hear that she was too.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they stuck to what should be. The law should not care if Bev hates her or she hates the prosecutor. The only issue I really have with Hank is the fact that he took this case, because it is a unique situation in the law. Like, if you hire me to represent you, I am obligated to do everything I can within my legal powers that are legal and ethical to get you off. No pun intended there. But you know what I'm talking about. The issue is when you're a prosecutor, I probably would fail at that, but the prosecutor doesn't have that obligation. In fact, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
If they come to learn that something is not there, or they can't prove the case, or someone else is guilty, and Hank knows this, then they shouldn't take it. And unfortunately, they hired a gun. It was a hired gun, Hank, and he was obviously much better than Lally. And that's a concern to Karen. When I first saw them, you're now facing someone, not Lally, which you should have beaten, but now you have Hank Brennan here, and he was so much better than almost all of them there.
He was scary.
It is scary. And everything aside, it's scary that you may lose your livelihood, your life. And that's what Karen was going through. So everything I say is prefaced on, I understand what she was going through, and the attorneys too. It's so easy for me to sit back and criticize what they missed or didn't miss. But when you're going through it, your client's life is on the line. It's not just money, it's their entire life. So it's a huge 100%. Issue to deal with from the legal standpoint.
Yes.
What do you think? Again,
No, go ahead.
You go. What, with regard to the interview, I had like a few things with her not necessarily knowing what occurred. I thought she would know more than me as to what actually occurred potentially in the house or not. Now, I know that you're big on Colin and Allie and that conspiracy from the beginning. I didn't know why everyone started with that. I didn't realize that was the first information that you had. And we don't talk about Colin anymore. We don't talk about Allie anymore. I know you do, but what I'm doing on my path is really, he's irrelevant because of what Higgins did. And I don't feel like Karen is fully disclosing even now that Higgins was the person with the motive, the means, the opportunity.
This is huge. This is absolutely huge. This discussion is actually part of what I really wanted to talk to you about today. One more thing I want to mention before we pivot into this, because I think this is a really huge conversation. I think one of the things that really was on the Commonwealth side was the family. The fact that they felt self-righteous entitlement because John's parents and sibling were 100% behind them. And I felt that from Hank Brennan. That was this righteous indignation. And that's also why it was surprising to me that he didn't try in any way that he could to give her an unjust sentence in the end.
Yeah, and it's scary because you don't know, and you would expect them to be vindictive, but he wasn't. And in the end, he is a criminal defense attorney. They do have a different mentality, and I believe that's what came through. And ultimately, we do have appellate courts. You don't want to necessarily be appealing decisions. You'd rather just have the decision and not have to worry about it. And she got that. And I think Hank understood that. A lot of times people don't realize that attorneys we're just jockeys. We ride the horse that we have. Again, his obligation is not to ride the horse out no matter what. If he realizes that this case should not be prosecuted, they shouldn't do it.
Yeah. At that point, they all probably wanted to be done with it too. Like, I'm sure that, Judge Bev was done. As soon as that verdict came down, nobody wanted to continue this anymore.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that Bev was so biased against one side or the other. I don't know. I know Corey Hopkins feels differently than I do. I don't think that she technically was biased against everyone, meaning her final rulings. Some of her actions you may think it one way or another, but basically if you said objection, she sustained it anyway. So it didn't make a difference, right? You don't have to give it a reason. So it was very odd to me watching that, but she did it to both sides.
She did. Yeah, this is a really big discussion too. I feel like we could spend hours just on the judge, especially now that we have the sidebars. Those have added a whole nother element. So I agree to some degree with what you're saying. I think her bias came more in what she didn't allow than once they were like the defense had to fight for everything they got. In the end, I think they got a lot of what they fought for. And we hear that in the sidebars. However, a lot didn't make it into the trial. That's where I think the bias was stronger, was what she essentially wouldn't even allow, like the feds, right? Not allowing the jury to know that the feds were the ones that hired Arca. That's an example.
Yeah. And then we talk about that because, and I'm willing to speak about this for a long extended period of time with you today. My schedule is embarrassingly wide open. So I'm okay with like slowing it down and going through, because this is what I really enjoy doing. Like I really enjoy having people have a different opinion than me. So on my channel, Sam, I never block anyone for any reason. You can come in and call me a greasy wop, guinea, whatever you want. As long as YouTube allows it, you can do it. I will never block you. And if you have a different opinion, I will never block you. So with the way I'm approaching this criminal investigation, I always say this is my first actual criminal investigation involving a murder. And I want to have different opinions so that if I can't get rid of it, if I can't disprove it, then it has to stay in. Like if I can't disprove that Colin was there, then I have to keep him in there just as a suspect. I don't know. This is my first murder investigation. So this is what I'm doing, and that's how I'm handling it. And I used to fall asleep to watching the FBI files and this old TV show. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's like from the 80s and 90s. They put a lot of time in the production. This was before any dope attorney with a computer can broadcast. So you had to put a lot of time into actual production. But Sam, if they were told that there was a red car that was a truck and they would have 10,000 potential people in that actual pool, they went to every single person, 10,000, until they got rid of everyone. In our case, we have a Ford Edge or vehicle similar to that at 3:15 in the morning, and nobody did anything. It's not the FBI's jurisdiction, but for that particular case, nobody did anything with regard to that. That's insane to me.
Yep.
And then just at the Tepe case, you know the Tepe, the dentist that got murdered?
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, most likely it's a spouse or an ex-spouse, but they followed his car. How? By using cameras and casing the entire block, the entire state. Same thing with Adelson. Where is all that information? And I'm not giving up on that data being there. There are people that save clips for years. I know, like, I have a security camera. I have them from like years ago. So you can't just give up. You have to keep pursuing this. I say every time that I can that Brian Higgins killed John O'Keefe, and I do it with malice. And I know you are not involved in my representation here, but I do it with malice.
Yep.
I'm ready to be sued by him. I have the discovery ready, because if he does, then I can actually pursue the discovery that I want. I don't know if Karen ever went for the carrier records. I want to know that I have the 5 cell phone towers at around 34 Fairview ready. The numbers, you can get the data from it. They won't give it to me just as a normal citizen, but if I'm a defendant in a defamation lawsuit, I can definitely get that information. So things like that is where I'm pursuing. But you wanted to speak about first Higgins and the potential of Karen signaling Higgins at the waterfall, which blew my mind last night. I didn't realize that Sergio said this. So you told me last night that Sergio had said Karen was signaling Higgins at the waterfall by ignoring him.
Yep.
That she
was not ignoring
John.
him.
So can you explain it to me then?
Okay, so what Sergio was saying is that when he is doing when Brian Higgins is being crossed by Alan Jackson about this whole sequence of events, right? The waterfall. One of the statements that he makes is he did not feel ignored. And he's very clear about it. I think it comes out exactly like that. I did not feel ignored. So Sergio, at that point, says or determines that was a truthful statement. And he sort of chalks it up to, well, listen, if there's body language, there's ways to communicate to somebody without actually speaking. Now, at the time, it's bothered me a long time, because I've been trying to figure out, just like, you have, right? What would have been Brian Higgins' motive for attacking John, right? Some people think he wasn't attacking. He went to bring him the messages, to basically out Karen for having had this thing with him. That was kind of the direction I was leaning in, until it dawned on me the other day. I was thinking back to high school and a whole thing that happened with me in a relationship that I wasn't really in, but that, the whole thing, high school.
Well, were you the one cheating or being cheated on? You were hooking up with the guys.
Been in both of those situations.
No, I'm talking about the one you were thinking about, though. Me too,
No.
but I'm just.
In that situation, it was my relationship.
It was your relationship, and someone was hooking up with your boyfriend?
Yes. Right. Yes.
Okay, so you would be the Karen. Well, no, would you be the Karen?
No, I wasn't the Karen.
No, you weren't Karen.
I've been the Karen.
Me too.
My point is, though, it didn't really matter. What I was focused on was the jealousy. Was like the drunk jealousy that a frustrated adolescent male can arrive at.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I remember that part too.
Irrationality. So, and then I was thinking about how I would behave in a drunk situation where if I'm ignoring somebody outright, and I have videos of this, she's placing herself right in front of Brian Higgins, not on the other side of the bar. She is at one point on the other side, off in the corner, talking to Jen when she first gets there. But at one point, she is literally, I think when he sends the unwell text message, she is literally to his right. So she is placing herself directly in front of him, leaping over the bar, screaming at whoever's next to her. It's sort of like he's peacocking with the fighting with Brian Albert. Well, she's doing kind of something similar. She's performing in front of him in the same way. And that to me is not somebody I don't care about. If I don't care about you, I'm not performing in front of you like that. I might say, hey, I would probably treat him the way that I always had. And their relationship was built on bar flirting at the hillside. That's how they knew each other. So the fact that she's outright ignoring him to me was significant. And it's something that I just hadn't really dawned on me until I had sort of done what we had talked about, which is place myself in an adolescent drunk mindset, thinking about, okay, if this is me in a bar and my boyfriend, blah, 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 if I'm ignoring somebody like that, it means something. It's not irrelevant.
Yeah, 100%. And now I'm thinking back to that situation. You've been in a situation where you've ignored a guy physically, right? And you could feel them there. You know that they're looking, but you've done it two ways. One, because you didn't want to talk to him at all. Like you literally wanted to ignore him.
No.
Well, how about the other where
to think that I was ignoring them?
Okay, so that's the other part where we know where you gather around your friends, you laugh extra loud so that they see you. And I get what you're saying. Is she doing that? I saw that, but I don't know if she's doing it to get Brian's attention, only because the week earlier when they were finally together alone, there was no chemistry. She had no attraction to him. So I understand what you're saying, and perhaps it's true, but everyone in a real affair or even relationship knows nothing matters until you get alone, right? So you can meet someone on the app, you're talking. I was before the app thing, but I met my wife on JDate, even though I'm Italian. For 2 weeks, I was on JDate, Sam. She was on for like 2 years.
Okay.
I would fall in love with these girls, right? I'm texting, I'm emailing. You get in person, they look nothing like their picture, and there's 100%. Zero chemistry. All right, so I was making this mistake. And then once you get to the point where both click, then it's and it's on. It wasn't on after. We would have saw so much more in terms of texting after they met privately if Karen was into him.
Okay. I have one potential. You're not going to like this, though. You're going to disagree with me on
Just
this.
say it. I like the
disagreement.
Okay. Yeah, the disagreement.
So,
that's her conflict.
I think that he must have said to her, I think she was looking to hook up with him. Remember, they know each other. They are not meeting like two people that meet on an app, right? They have been together drinking mostly. Keep that in mind too. Most of their relationship is like buzzed at the bar. So now they're not buzzed. They're coming together sober, which I'm sure is part of what the challenge was. Navigating, interacting as two sober people. Karen's in a relationship. He still knows that. And the entire time that he's talking to her, he's trying to suss out, and he really is, right? I know he says that too, but like he is trying to figure out, like, is she serious? Is she fucking with me? Is she trying to get back at John? So to me, I think he does like her. I also think she was trying to hook up with him. Most men don't agree with that because they can't imagine that she would have been attracted to him like that. But I think she was. And I think that's what her messages tell us. It's possible to me, my point is this, it's possible that she goes there with the intent of him making a move. He doesn't do it. It's awkward because of that. And instead, he says, look, if you're not going to leave John, like, we're not doing this. And that's the unwell.
Well, sort of. Would we agree that had there been a real connection, even if they had sex there, you would see different communication straight away and then throughout the next week.
Okay. Yes.
Because if you had an affair, or especially in the affair situation, because she's in the affair mode because it's got to be secret, you would, my friends have told me this, you would see a lot of sexting, a lot of craziness that she's not going to be doing with their husband. It would be insane. Again, I only heard this from my friends, but that's what they say what would happen. Not a week of nothing and then him trying his hardest, which was cute with the Tom Brady picture, I believe, going good riddance, like anything in psychology you would know, any type of common ground just to try and elicit a response again.
Totally.
Had there been a real passion, I think that we would have seen a lot more.
Well, and that's but again, my original thought was exactly what you're saying, that she wasn't, that they didn't have chemistry. Here's the one thing that I have a hard time with, though, and that disputes it for me. The next morning at 11 o'clock, 11:50 something, I think, she texts him, John is dead. John died. And to me, if she really doesn't care, again, if we add that text with the fact that she totally ignores him, and again, that's important because totally ignoring is so different from an acknowledgement, like hi, waving something. That's really what signals I don't care about you. I think what could have really pissed him off is the fact that she did ignore him, which sent a different message than I don't care. It sent the message that John is the problem. Right? Do you see what I mean? It sends the message.
You said that. Was that Sergio's theory or your theory?
No, that's my theory. Because the only thing that Sergio sort of helped me think through is the fact that he didn't feel ignored. And if that's true, if Brian Higgins doesn't feel ignored, because she is right in front of him, essentially screaming and yelling and sort of sending all these signals, then it tells him, again, that John is the problem, not Karen. And that was tough for me to get to. It took me a very long time because, again, I'm trying to figure out why would he attack John? It just didn't make sense to me for a long time.
Yeah, and I get it. And he and her were always at a bar, except for the time when they kissed, which people were around. So they never were private. That every time they were at the bar, she would be very, very outgoing to him. We know that there's a point where she even claimed that she deleted the text. So I don't even know if we ever saw those, but clearly he's getting the reassurance. I think I told this to Emily C, that there are girls in a guy's life where we like them so much that our first goal isn't even hooking up with them. It's rare. Generally, we'll hook up with anybody. This is just from a male perspective. But there are girls that are so at a level that we want, not physically, but also mentally, that we will forego hooking up with. And sort of Brian was doing that here, wanting her to take control. He was insecure with this entire time, but it's not as if he wasn't willing to go behind John's back. I mean, he had no problem making out with her and then communicating with her. So I believe, Sergio, that when he was saying he wasn't being ignored, he was doing it from a legal perspective to protect himself, because he knows that motive is a huge issue. You don't just randomly kill people unless you're a serial killer. So motive is an issue. Had he admitted to the fact that he was being ignored, then all of a sudden that could be the reason why he got angry. So I would like to hear what your super chats are saying, not because of
I'm seeing them right. So let's bring them up. So Cynthia Marks sends $4.99, asks, do you really think that Higgins was showing John the text in the house because he was always so afraid of John finding out? What do you think?
I had this same thought, because when you're in an affair, from what I heard from guys, the last thing you want to do is let the other person know. But I had told you and everyone else, rule number one in affairs, you both have to be on equal footing in terms of a relationship. You never have an affair with a single person. This is what always happens. Either you call your spouse or something. Higgins had nothing to lose with regard to a wife, kids, nothing. So this was Karen's bigger mistake. And do you notice how she downplays the affair aspect? She's like, John and I were just dating. We didn't have a mortgage together. She knows that she either looks bad because of it or people are going to judge her negatively. I don't judge her negatively for it. I'm fine with everything that happened, and obviously not with Higgins' reaction. So is it, as a guy, you're going to say maybe? I think that Higgins is such a immature guy with regard to girls that he may have done that. But Sam, there was a point at the waterfall where something snaps because he went from unwell to threatening John, and I can't see even a bump of a shoulder, anything that would trigger that.
Right.
So what was it?
But what might trigger that is Karen performing in front of him. Because because I did what you were talking about. I went back and I watched that video between 11:30 and when they walk out to look at exactly that. Where is the snap? The only thing that happens after the unwell, which I think was the beginning, obviously he's escalating, right? And throughout the night, he's escalating. As soon as they walk in, I think his emotions are going up, right? He's intensifying in terms of his anxiety. But the unwell is very significant. It shows a lot of emotion, right? Because it's not just an unwell. It's got all, it's got all of the M's, right? It's got the exclamation or question marks, like 6 question marks. So he's definitely evidencing emotion there. But right after that, that's when she gets in front of him. That's when she's right on the other side of him, leaning over, talking to Nicole Albert, talking to Jen McCabe. And it's literally, at one point, I actually think, it's hard to see because that video is so bad, but at one point, I think she's actually literally right next to him. Like, there isn't anybody in between them. Yeah. So it's like, okay, that's the message. To me, why would he escalate? Because she's right next to him, and he can't have her.
Yeah. And now that you brought up a good point with regard to bringing it back to high school. Is that you or me?
That's me.
Where are you?
I'm in New York City.
I know that. I mean, we're not going to all come to your apartment. Hey, Sam, I've been around so long. I've had cops call on me. I've had my kids' pictures, social security numbers posted. This is more Wild West back in the day, so I just give out my addresses.
Really
yeah,
okay.
Because, well, you and I have a connection. We could sort of talk about this.
Yes.
You used to work for the Howard Stern show, which I didn't know. And I got a warning from Miss Judy. She said, Vince, you can't be so crude like you usually are when talking to Stuttering John, which was last night. I go, well, thanks, Miss Judy. But Samantha happens to come from the exact world where I was from and where I grew up actually listening to. Now, I don't know if many people know about us. I recognized your last name, and I used to sleep with a guy every night. I think Monday to Fridays, or was it overnights, weekends?
It was No.
Both?
It was Monday through Friday. So it was Sunday night because Monday into Thursday night, right?
So I used to sleep with this guy every night, fall asleep to his voice on 660 WFAN, and the name was very familiar. So your dad is Joe Beningo.
100%. Yes, it is.
I don't know if you ever disclosed that to your fans or whatever, because I've never heard.
No, I'm not. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did your dad get that job?
That's a funny story. My dad's story is fascinating because he did not go to broadcasting school. Like, he did not go to Syracuse, right? He essentially, so WFAN in 1988, I believe, right, was the very first launch of the station. It was the first of its kind. Mike, for those that don't know, there were these two kind of big shots in sports talk radio. Mike and Chris, Mike Francesa and Christopher Russo, Mike and the Mad Dog. My father, my parents divorced right as that station, came to be, and they needed callers. So my father was a caller, and he would call up and he would talk about the Jets. And obviously my father has this incredible memory. It's incredible. Before Google, I would just call my dad and like hum 3 notes of a song, and he would tell me, not only like who the artist was, but the year and a lot about them, whatever. So he has that ability, and he has that ability with sports. And so,
he's got that voice. He's got the voice for radio, the voice and face for radio, as they say.
Anybody, anytime. Yes.
Yes.
Very consistently a personality for sure. So that's how he got it. I mean, one day Mike said, hey, put Joe on hold to the producer. And he did. And he said, Joe, I think you could really do this. And my dad at that time, you had to pay to get on air time. Before a station would hire you, you had to have like experience at least being on an open air line. He did that. Then the station held like a contest for overnight hosts. He won, and the rest is sort of history.
Yeah, Sam, because I remember your dad's first day for whatever reason, because I remember him being a caller, and then I remember him having a show, and I never, back then I wouldn't know or care, but I just didn't know how that came to fruition. So that's great. Yeah, so I mean, obviously Dad had a hugely successful career. He's still out there doing it, which is great. I love when he comes on with his headset, doesn't care. I love it. It's so great to me. Yeah, so at one time though, you were working for the Howard Stern show. Obviously I had connections to that. And one of my great friends, Michelle Jerson, was working at the news department for which you were interning at, which we just come to learn, which is great. So I like that aspect. You learn so much from Howard. Everyone thinks that Howard's this crude, obnoxious. It doesn't work like that. You can't just come on and be obnoxious everywhere and every time and everything's sexual. It's not like that. There's a lot of professionalism that goes on there. Yeah, there's hijinks. It's fucking radio. Radio is always... Howard even said radio's supposed to be like rock and roll. Like it used to be that way. Like this is just the way it is. So yeah, I'm proud of you and your dad. But now it's funny, Sam, because sometimes your shows do more viewers than your dad's WFAN or whatever when the fan, I know he's not there anymore, but when the fan comes on, they only may have like 400 viewers. So I always get proud of you for that.
So funny. No, well, I mean, it's, listen, it is what it is. I don't think my dad is as concerned about it. I think he just likes being able to talk about sports, right? Because that's what he's going to do anyway. That is what he does. A lot of these sports people, like these sports talk show hosts, their whole life is sports. Like that is what they're doing, whether they're talking about it on the air or not. And that is what he is doing, whether he's talking about it or not. So, okay, James Jameson 6181 sends not $5, £5. Would the McAlberts risk everything? So this is a great question, and I'm so glad that you asked it for Vince. Would the McAlberts risk everything just for Higgy Bear?
No. And I get this question a lot too. They're not risking it all. I think you all will come to maybe realize that the only people that truly knew that Brian Higgins killed John O'Keefe were Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, and Chief Berkowitz, those three. Those are the only three so far that I can substantiate. Now, I never make the claim about Brian Albert publicly like I do to Higgins because I don't have necessarily the connection. I don't have the motive, but I know that he's involved. I just can't say exactly how or where. Now, when I say that they won't cover for Brian, all they're doing is coming up with a story. They've all lied on the stands. That goes to, obviously, Jen McCabe, and every one of the House defendants has lied on the stand about specific items. The question is, why are they lying? Because they came up with a timeline or because they knew. If you're going to claim that they knew that Brian Higgins was attacked, you have to show me more than what I've seen so far. Now, I'm open to that, but if the Google search was real and if you believe it was real at that time, then surely that would prove it, right? If it's 100%. But I wouldn't go into court with all the evidence to the contrary that's there. So you may believe that Jen Googled how long to die in snow or cold at that time, but there's too much ability to counter it. Where I'm not going to stop everything because of that. But if that is true, then obviously they knew. So
this is a great question. And this was the problem that I had for a really long time. There's two ways you can answer this. One is to realize that they had so many connections in law enforcement and in the district attorney's office. So one way to answer this is not if they're not risking anything. Not if Brian Albert knows right from the start. They've got Mike Lank, like he knows it's never going to cross him. You've got Lank, you've got Good. These are the two guys that show up and do the quote investigating right from the beginning. All of the cops from Canton absolutely adore Kevin Albert, so much so that they can't hide how much they love him. It just oozes out of them no matter which trial we're talking about, right? They love Kevin Albert. So those guys are never going to cross Brian Albert. He knows that. Never. It's never going to happen. Then you've got the Boston PD. Now, we saw what happened there. He's got the commissioner, right, threatening this young cop, right? So we know that he felt comfortable that the Boston Police Department was behind him. And like you were saying, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the chief of the Canton Police, Berkowitz, knew what was going on. This is Higgins' very best friend. Not only because he said, if you want to hide a body, he's the guy, but because he knew. I mean, there's no question he knew. He definitely knew. He definitely helped cover for
Can we
Higgins.
stop though and acknowledge at least how funny Chief Berkowitz was? The fact, from a comedic standpoint, the fact that he thought he could take taillight days later, throw it out there, and then call into his lackeys, hey, I see some taillight from the street as I'm randomly driving by, is one of the most funny things that anyone can do. Even if he was trying to be serious, I have to say, Chief Berkowitz is fucking funny.
It's
That's funny. It's hilarious.
It's absurd, right? And then the fact that like the way that they act about there not being chain of custody, that they act like they have no idea what those words mean. I mean, there's so many moments here with this evidence that were mishandled. Partly, I think, because of incompetence, but a lot of it was intentional.
You
right?
just brought up a point about, sorry to cut you.
No, go
just
ahead.
because I'm thinking about you asked me about the Karen interview. She was very disturbed / upset about the lack of specificity in their reports. To me,
right.
And her example was that 5:30 compared to 4:30, or the timing, even just some minute details.
Mm-hmm.
That's her personality. Karen is very type A. Everything needs to be accurate. I always thought that like cops sort of don't really care so much about specificity at their level. Like if I left the house at 4:30 compared to 4:15, they're not necessarily keeping such great records.
Okay.
And obviously, meaning like they're not doing it intentional. Now,
right,
I don't know if Proctor didn't, so like if I was a cop, I would be the worst cop. First of all, I wouldn't stop anyone for anything. I don't want to risk my life. I don't want to shoot anybody. I don't want to stop anyone from stealing a TV. I'd rather Target deal with the loss than me.
Sure.
But I would be a horrible cop. But I probably also wouldn't be that great of a record keeper either. Who the hell wants to do the paperwork, as they say? So
yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Karen was referencing that a lot in her interview with that Mango woman.
I would have agreed with you until Melanie Little presented the chain of custody report for an older case. I forget his Justin. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. The cop that they had accidentally shot, or that they shot. I don't know if it was accidentally, but so in that case, when you look at how they handled this evidence, I mean, it is incredible. We're talking about like anytime anything was moved, no matter what or who touched it, it is carefully documented. Now, I agree with you that like they're going to approximate time, but it's interesting because she got that report. It was like the only evidence they had almost immediately, the arrest report. And it was so off base that she was like, what is going on? It confused her until she saw the CERT report. And then it was like, oh, well, of course, they needed to get the car back here before they find taillight, right?
Right.
They wanted, the other way around. They needed to get the car back, but they wanted it to look like the car wasn't back before they found the taillight. And that was the point. Right?
Yeah. And Sam, how scary is it, though, that if they find that taillight there, you're sitting in jail. That's a huge hurdle to overcome. I don't just immediately default to corruption and this big conspiracy. I don't. So I'm freaking out. And I know Karen's freaking out too. Thank God there was video. Thank God for the leaf blowers walking through there. You would have found all the taillight when you're doing this. This wasn't a huge amount of fluffy snow. It's not that hard to find red and white. It makes it easier. Like, thank God for that. Otherwise, it would be so hard to win this case if it wasn't 100%. For that fact.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And Karen actually does mention, as you said, she's grateful for Proctor, because if it wasn't for the fact that he's such an idiot and he is just flagrant about his behavior, right? He's texting his high school buddies day one. I mean, oh my God, it's so egregious. I think it is with Proctor specifically, I think it's half stupidity and just not being a good cop. And the other is taking directive. I don't think he had any authority to do anything in this case on his own. So to blame him, I think, has always been unfair and misguided. Clearly, Brian Tully, anybody above him would have been, and really the DA, would have had to have been who was calling the shots, right? Because Proctor had no authority, and he wasn't going to, on his own, plant taillight or anything else.
Yeah, I had initially made the mistake blaming Proctor for planting the taillight. And then I realized when you get into it that it had to be Chief Berkowitz, and I don't believe they would have even brought anyone else in. If you just kill someone, Sam, you're not going to trust Matt McCabe and Jen McCabe with this information. I mean, you can't trust anyone. First of all, you can't tell anyone. He only tells Brian Albert because he needs to do this, right? Those are the only two that are away from the scene at the time when Brian Higgins Higgins attacked John. But you can't just haphazardly bring people into this thing. And to think that Proctor and Yuri would just risk their entire careers for some unknown guy, that's a huge, huge risk. I actually like Proctor. This may sound weird. When I see him talking, I know guys that are like him. He wasn't intentional. Compare Proctor to Tully. Now, Tully, you get a complete different vibe, right? Tully knows what he's doing.
Yep.
And
Tully's the bad guy.
He is totally bad. Like, there's one thing that I always admired about you, and this is what when I first heard. Like, I may misquote you, but is it so hard to do the right thing? You said something to that effect. I mean, just as a cop, can you say we made a mistake and correct it? Is that so hard? Like, was that so hard to do? And then, of course, I used that audio and to show how much you loved Hank Brennan. Like, I had transferred. Do we have any hero out there? You know, you had the hero song, and then I had Hank Brennan in the hearts to implicate how much you loved Hank Brennan. But that's the juxtaposition that I like in terms of humor. But I don't believe that Proctor and Yuri are bad guys. I believe that they're completely negligent with their investigation. Obviously, they were wrong. But you got to remember, too, you had forces working against them. I want someone to represent Proctor, and Proctor to recognize that his career was totally maligned by Higgins, by Brian Albert, and the comedian Chief Berkowitz. They were planting evidence. So what is he supposed to do? He thinks, because he's not that bright, he thinks this was an accident.
He thinks it was an accident. He believes that Karen Read did this.
Yeah, he does, unfortunately. Yeah, and you have to dig further. And with a guy like Tully in charge of them, they won't think of any other option, even if it's presented to them. So if you want to talk about confirmation bias, there it is.
Oh, yeah, they're the worst offenders ever. Abacus Flinch 05 sends $20, says Karen friendzone Higgins. Karen Read vented to Brian Higgins about John, and the flirting gave him hope of a relationship. When she ghosted him, I bet he vented, yes, only knew Brian Albert, and Brian Albert only knew one way to solve problems among men. Then he snapped. Yeah, I mean, I certainly could see some version of that. It's clear that Brian and Chris, you know, these guys must have said something, because it does appear like Chris Albert knew that he was heated up and that it was directed at John from the waterfall video.
Okay, please. You're friends with Chris Albert, I think. You had a meal with him, supposedly. He is one of the keys to this case. Yeah, he grabs that arm, and I went back. There could be a different reason. We don't know why he did that. I know Higgins is threatening John. I could see that. I don't know why Brian did that, because if you follow and you're looking for something to trigger Higgins, you're watching them. You're seeing the big boy from the band, the heavyset guy. He's right there too, right? So and who knows at a bar what's going on, but clearly, Chris Albert knows something. He may not know exactly. He was implicated initially, but I don't know why people thought that Chris Albert was involved. I guess because of his son. But either way, he was there. So tell us about the time you went to D&E Pizza.
So it's really funny. You know, anybody can go meet Chris Albert because he's always at his pizza shop, and that's his place. Like, whoops, that's his shop. Like, that's where he's going to be, and he's there like all the time. I figured I'd go there and there'd be some kid working, but there wasn't. He was opening the store, and so it was very interesting. It was tough for me because I walked in and WEEI is playing, and so it has a New York pizza shop vibe. There was sports radio playing, like, you know, the first thing he does when he walks in is turn on the sports radio. So it was a very familiar experience to me being in there, and that was tough, right? Because, yeah, there's no question that the more you know people, the harder it's going to be to want to see them and paint them in a negative light. There's no doubt that when I left there that day, I felt a little bad saying anything mean about Chris Albert, because I could see this is not a bad human being. He's a lot like every other guy that, I've known over the years, right? Who loves sports and eats pizza. I love pizza, right? He's a regular guy, right? So it is tough because I don't think that they're all just terrible human beings that deliberately tried to murder a cop. But I do think that there are multiple crimes here. And that's kind of another thing that you and I differ about a little bit, which is there are multiple crimes. There's, of course, the murder. And that's the part that I think you've been sort of very singularly focused on. And I've sort of also get into being really frustrated around the perjury and all of these sort of ancillary figures, including Colin, because I can't tolerate the lying. It drives me absolutely insane. It really does.
Yeah. And with regard to Chris, he never fled. And there is that saying that is in True Grit that I bring up sometimes, but I think it's a biblical saying, which hit me when I saw it on the screen, is that the criminals do flee when no one's chasing. And if you think about it,
right,
where is Brian Albert? Where did he flee when no one's chasing? The answer is yes. No one's heard from Chief Berkowitz for years. And I don't know where Brian Higgins is. The only time we've ever seen him was when Aiden was driving down at a sandwich place and he came out and tried to attack him. So he's on edge too.
Definitely.
And everyone else that I think that will come to the public has nothing to do with it. That means Kerry Roberts. That means Chris Albert. This is just based upon a movie quote that I've seen, but there is a lot of validity to that statement.
Joey36 sends $10, says, do you believe this idea that the feds are focused on Proctor Tully, MSP unit of NDAO, for Birchmore cover-up, and that Proctor's 13 years of phone could lead them back to framing of Karen Read via taillight?
I say no. I don't think you're going to have any information with regard to framing Karen Read on Proctor's phone, because I can't risk, if I'm Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, involving Proctor. We don't know if this guy is a straight shooter. Not everyone's going to be on a cop's side, and he's going to risk his entire career. But more importantly to Higgins, he's risking his life. It's not just a job. He killed somebody. So you have to be very careful what you're doing. The only person that I have evidence that he could trust was Chief Berkowitz. That's it. And Brian Albert. So those three. I have no evidence that anyone else knew about this murder besides those three. And because the chief was the chief, he can throw the taillight, then call one of his lackeys, and they have to go and get the taillight, even if it's a week later, in a big piece.
2 weeks,
so, yeah, whatever it may be. Even funnier. If you throw someone out there now, it would be even funnier if he did it now.
Right, that's right.
You have to laugh at how comical this is.
So absurd.
But thank God for all this for Karen, because what if we weren't doing this? What would have happened if there's no YouTube or there's no outlet that we all had? Brian Higgins would have got away with murder.
Well, and Karen Read would have been in jail for it, right?
Yes, that's the scary part.
It's very
so
scary.
to answer this question, though, the FBI has jurisdiction over certain crimes based upon me listening to the FBI files, and police corruption is one. It appears that they did go through Proctor's phone and they didn't find the corruption. That's what it appears. Whether you like that or not, when they do something, the FBI, it is not half-ass at all. They use their entire ass when they're dealing with this. So there is no way that if there was some corruption that we'd still have it ongoing. Although the FBI is cool. They'll let you commit crimes for years in order to make their case stronger. And that's sort of the approach that I'm taking in my first murder investigation is I have to take the time, minute by minute, even second by second, and then eventually solve this. I wish, Sam, that there were people in Massachusetts designated to solve crimes. But this one is just so obvious that I have to devote my time to doing it.
I always love when you say that because it's so true, right? The fact that,
scary.
There's just, the cops did nothing. There was no investigating because Proctor saw one shoe. But how do you not realize that, you see one shoe, but there's no injuries on him. So you're saying that he was hit so hard, he's hit out of his shoe, he's knocked out of his shoe. That's what he's saying when he implies that. but there's no injuries on the body that implies that. So if you're saying on one hand, he's knocked so far by this car out, the force is so intense that he's literally ripped out of his shoes, which is exactly the implication. But then there's no bruises below the neck. How can if you're Proctor, how do you not see that?
Again, because of his lack of experience. But if Brian Higgins and Brian Albert knew that they could have potentially pinned this on a car accident, what could they have done differently to make it really seem like it would be a car accident?
Yeah, right. That's a great question. To your point, I really don't think. I think it was Jennifer McCabe that next morning at the Minion meeting talking about Karen's statements, could I have hit him, mentioning the taillight. That's the moment that Brian Higgins says to her, call Lank, did you tell Lank? That's the moment where the light bulb goes off and he's like, we're going to put this on a Karen Read.
Oh, yeah, totally. But could they have broken John's bones before setting him out there? Now, all of a sudden, there goes the argument, right? So, like, assuming that they're willing to do this, and I don't see why they wouldn't be, if they really were trying to believe that he was dead and they were trying to pin on a car accident, you can break a kneecap with something if you took a 100%. Hammer, something like. So they did not plan on pinning this on Karen when they put him out there.
No,
at 3:15 because they would have done it differently. Now, again, in hindsight, I told him I'd be throwing up if I saw a dead body, right? But these two have been around this before.
Oh, of course.
So I didn't give him enough credit initially, thinking like, how the fuck could they do this? How can they come up with this? And even with the cell phone, Sam, because I'm getting past that, I'm analyzing the cell phone movement, and I know there's going to be an issue from my hypothesis with regard to the cell phone and the lack of movement after the 132. So I haven't got there yet. I'm just moving slowly through it. But I don't know if these two idiots, that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, were smart enough to move the phone to the final resting spot initially. Meaning, could they have put the phone near the flagpole initially? Are they that smart enough to do that? I don't know, right? Because that would.
A couple of things here with the phone that I think are really interesting. And this is where, to your point about Brian Higgins not being able to trust anybody besides the chief and Brian Albert, this is where I think Jen and Matt and Nicole become, complicit in the murder. He needs them. He has to have them. Brian Albert needs them to do their part here. And one of the challenges, remember, this is family. I mean, Brian Albert is the oldest of 7 children. This is an Irish Catholic town community. And one of the things that community is so big on pushing, right, is family. Like, that is huge. These people were so close. So to me, he needed them. Brian Albert needed them. And he needed Jen McCabe. He needed Jen McCabe to get close to Carrie, to get close to Peg and the family. These guys all had their role, and there's only a handful of them. I agree with you there. I don't think that there's beyond Jen, Matt, and Nicole. You could argue maybe Chris and his wife, Julie.
So you're saying, though, at 2:15 in the morning, did Jen McCabe know that Brian Higgins attacked John?
I believe she did, because when you look at the extraction report, people that are much, much smarter than me look at that report and say that somebody, I'm guessing it was Matt McCabe, went into that report and made changes, and it's very clear that they did that, right? And they can point to you what those changes were. So to me, I mean, they're not even even in court, they tell us that the key that was supposed to be the validity, the thing that gives the cell phone report all of its validity for Jen McCabe is actually different from the original key. So we know that that's an issue. We know that the cell phone report has been tampered with for Jen, and I cannot imagine for any other reason why it would be if that cell phone, if she did not Google house long to die in the cold at 2:27.
Yeah. So aside from that, I said but I don't agree with the fact that someone, especially Matt McCabe, tampered with anything. That's where I get I stop, generally. Now, I didn't with regard to the taillight, but I'm just stopping there. I'm only focusing on who actually attacked and killed John. But they would all be guilty of murder if they knew that he was attacked and then did nothing, if they just stood by and then intentionally tried to cover it up. And I'm talking about everyone in the house, because there's no way that John is getting attacked in that house and everyone there not knowing. It's just too small of a house. It's too small of an area.
Good point. Let me be clear. I don't think that they knew until after the fact. I don't think Jennifer knew at that time. She's not moving. Just to your point about the moment by moment cell phone information of John, she's not, getting up and down. She's not doing all of this crazy moving the way that she claims. And to me, there's no way that Jen isn't going to get up and go see John if he walks in that house. So I do not believe that at that time she knew. She finds out sometime in the middle of the morning is my belief.
All right. Yeah. So that's a total different thing. And
I
could live with that maybe eventually, but just I'm only up to literally at 12:32. So in terms of where I am, and so it's like, I don't think that her actions, her text messages, her calling were there to cover up a murder. I think she legitimately is looking outside. This is her friend. There wasn't any conflict, and she's trying to figure out, what the fuck are you doing? You're outside. Pull behind me. Here, like, this is all natural behavior.
Exactly. What are you doing? I agree with you. And then she calls him. She calls John. Right.
So Sam, yesterday I heard that there was a call at 12:27, according to the records, that lasted for 8 seconds. That would mean that John's already there for 2 minutes. Do you believe that John actually spoke to Jen at that time?
That's a great question. I have struggled with this. When I did the analysis of Jen McCabe's texts to John during that time, it seemed like she was classifying them into two categories. The ones that happened around the pull behind me, and then the ones that happen sort of after 12:45. And I cannot figure out why. So I think it's possible she does speak to him. I don't think it means that she's lying because she knew about the crime at the time. I think if she's lying about the call, it's because, again, they're trying to, like Karen was saying, keep it simple. The guy never came in the house, period. That's to me what they went with very quickly. Remember, they were drunk. That's the reason why they didn't think through, he got into a car accident. There's not enough bruises on him. They weren't thinking that far ahead. It was just, we're going to say the guy never came in the house. Maybe he fell. We don't know. We're going to put him outside and say he never came in, period.
And how scary it would be if they took a sledgehammer to his knees and legs and broke his legs.
Oh, my God.
I'm talking at 3:15.
Oh, my God.
Now, all of a sudden, you can't win the case on there's no accident in terms of a car accident.
That's a really good point.
Right. So if they were so great at trying to cover it up, again, that goes back to your point. They had no idea that they could pin this on Karen until finally Higgins hears, I may have hit him. And my God, he must have felt some glimmer of hope when he heard that, right? Because he went through fucking crazy ass night, whatever those two did, and now there's a chance. I think they probably would have thought the snowplow theory. I don't know, or he just fell. Like, right? You have to do one or the other.
Yeah.
But Sam, at 12:25, he's walking up to the breezeway. Where is John at 12? Right before his phone starts to move, like physically, where is he? Is he in the house? Is he in the garage? Is he on the side?
All right.
Do you have a theory on that?
This is great questions.
Just at 12:30.
Yeah. So some people think that like he walks. I like that you have the driveway. You're showing the three cars. That's important. The three cars in that driveway are important. Matt McCabe really has a hard time being honest about it, but can't not tell us. So I think you were right or very close to where his Jeep actually was. When you look at the house, there actually were enough room for 3 lanes of vehicles. I think you placed the Jeep all the way over on the right in front of the garage. That's where I think you had the Jeep.
And I will say that it's not factually accurate, that car placement. In fact, like, I was just having a hard time making it what I want it to be. And that's why I want to go to the actual location and see how it is. Yeah. So what you're talking about is like the location of the cars. Are the cars enough to cover him actually attacking and or just talking to John O'Keefe, because you got to remember, Ricky's pulling up at virtually the same time at 12:25, and that girl's coming out, Bagel's coming out to the car. So if they're on the front lawn, people see them. There's no question. No one saw them.
On the front lawn.
Right. They're not. They're not even in view of that. So they have to be somewhere else. And if we agree that they're
not, the house.
I mean, that is the most plausible thing. So Karen is so insistent, and I know she's varied on this. Like, she's now insistent that he went in the house. She never admitted to seeing him go in the house. I know she never saw him go in the house. She assumed he did. I mean, it's natural. You go in and see what the fuck's up, right?
Yes.
But there's a great chance, and it makes more sense to me, that this took place outside of the house and not necessarily in the garage, because that would be odd to go into somebody's garage to talk.
Right. No, I think he probably went to go up into that house, and Brian says, "Hey, bro, come here." And that's where he takes him to the side of the house. The Jeep, he was probably sitting in the Jeep waiting for him, which has always been my guess, because he wanted to talk to him. And then it happens very quickly, and it happens on the side of the house, which, by the way, would have been right on the other side of where the gate was that Chloe was. So if we want to throw Chloe in the mix, it would have been, and we know Chloe can get over the gate. She's done it before. If there's a fight happening on the other side of that gate, it makes perfect sense that she would have then jumped the gate to try to find, to get to the aggression on the other side of it.
Yeah, and you make me think about my initial hypothesis that Higgins attacked him straight away at 12:25. That doesn't make sense now, because the commotion really would have been heard or saw by Bagel coming out, everyone. So if they're just talking on the side and Julie Nagel's brother pulls away at like 12:27, 12:28, now it's dead silence out there. Now they're still talking, and we know that John does manipulate his phone at 12:27 with the phone call, and it very well be that they're outside there, and it could happen then, and no one hears it or sees it.
Oh my God! And if Jen calls and he says, "I'm here, I'm just outside," that's the reason why she'd have to deny the call.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, totally. So we're talking about an 8-second call that Bob Alessi brought out that I didn't even recognize until yesterday, that occurred at 12:27. We know John's already there. We know Karen looked up, and then she looked down. She's just waiting and wouldn't necessarily know if those two are talking. But then again, are there text messages after that by Jen that would indicate the opposite, that she didn't know that he was here? I think after 12:28 there are, and I'll go back and look. But it is a good point what you're saying.
Well, she could have still been trying to call him. Like, at that point, if he said, "I am here, I'm outside," then she's like, "Where are you? You're still outside? Like, why aren't you here?"
Right. Yeah.
Right? She's still trying to get him in the house at that point.
Right. So my hypothesis is that Jen didn't know, she didn't do the Google, but I will say clearly she did lie. She lied about under oath. She lied about the position of the vehicle. She lied about the butt dials. So I'm not necessarily pro Jen, and I just want to try and figure out exactly how and when Brian Higgins. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sort of excluding all of that. I don't want to I know people get upset about. I don't care if I upset the people. I'm here to solve a murder here. But I'm not this delusional person that thinks Jen is the innocent person. But so far, Jen is not one of the 10 that attacked.
Right, she's not.
John.
She's not. She did not hurt John. She never would have hurt him on purpose. Okay, so Strange Credulity sends $20. Thank you, Strange Credulity. I love that name. What does Vince think about the glass Proctor supposedly found in the Lexus bumper that doesn't match the drinking glass? It's a great question.
Well, you got to remember, running that station is one of the funniest guys I've ever didn't have the pleasure to meet, but no, right? So why not just throw some glass on the bumper? These idiots don't care. They hit a jackpot with Yuri and Proctor. They're both naive. One's Ukrainian, great body, great dancer, Yuri, but not necessarily like the brightest guy. And see, I know a Proctor, Sam. Like one of my friends is like a Proctor, like a good guy that may not even be so crude, but also like loved being a cop. And like
I know.
There are people from the suburbs, and I know my friend, he's no longer alive, but if there was a fire in the suburbs, there are people that ride their cars to it. They have radio that listen to the fire people talking, and they drive the fires. That's what people do in the white suburbs. I don't know. That's where I grew up. So there are people that love this stuff. I don't think at all Proctor would ever risk his career for Brian Higgins, a guy that he never met. I know. And Brian Higgins can't take that chance. You can't. He had Berkowitz on his side. That was the key.
Correct. Yep. I
Did
agree
Berkowitz know he was dying?
Did Berkowitz know he was dying?
Yeah.
I don't know how long. So thank you for letting us know.
There we go. Look at this. Right on cue.
Good timing. Yes, I don't know at one point. My guess is probably that's why he was retiring. That would be my guess. He probably did know because it was a year and a half. It wasn't long after he retired that he actually passed away. I think it was pretty close.
Oh, they're saying because are they trying to claim Berkowitz is dead, and that's why we haven't heard from him?
Right. Yes, that's the
sure claim. Likely story. I don't trust anyone in Canton.
Yes, he's definitely gone, but he wasn't before the first trial. He was still alive during the first trial, right? He was probably not in very good shape, but he was still alive during the first trial.
How the hell was he not deposed or called at least?
That's a great question. I don't know. You know why? Actually, I do know. Because the video, remember, the defense didn't get the video, the inverted video, until the trial. So they didn't have, it took me forever to realize that Berkowitz is in that video, that he's actually in the Sally Port standing there when, they show Buchanan and Proctor. Nobody will identify him. Proctor doesn't want to say that that's who it is. Nobody wants to say it's Chief Berkowitz, but it's very clearly Chief Berkowitz, the glasses and the beard guard. Yeah, so I don't think they had the video. I just don't think they knew, because this is why the prosecutor's office withheld so much discovery from the defense. And then they didn't get the other video of Higgins at the police department until just before the second trial.
Oh, right. Of him walking down. And
yes.
Just to let you know, and let's give a plug to Queen Corey Hopkins, who is still to this day seeking more documents. And as much trash as I talked about the trial channel, amazing job by the trial channel, including the sidebar voices. Loved it. That was very great. Finally, they did some original work. Her and I always battle. I don't even know who she is, but we have this ongoing feud. Because one time, Sam, all I said was, randomly, out of the kindness of my heart, I sent her $5 on a video and said, great job, appreciate it. Not that $5 is going to go. But then I said, it would be nice if we had a waterfall video that was pulled together from all the different things, continuous. I mean, she does all these other, but she took that as I was trying to pay her $5 to do the waterfall video. And in lies the fighting that we've had ever since then. But she didn't know I was joking. But in the end, I would still like a full waterfall video that was just with, I know, and I have I had people put together, but then there's some parts that I miss, and I guess that Karen, I don't know why we don't have the actual video. Not I want to see the full raw video as opposed to watching it screen to screen, because there's so much going on at those few seconds. Because when Higgy Bear is leaving, I'm sure you watched this to try and figure out what triggered. He is across from John that stand-up table for a little bit, for a second, as he's starting to walk out, and then he sort of disappears a little bit, and then Chris Albert grabs his arm. Girls, I love those girls, the Forensic Files. We'll plug them too. I don't know if you know them, but there's this beautiful girl, Tuesday. She is so beautiful. And this girl, Dali Mama Lama, she is another. I mean, I know I'm a guy, so you may not be. One's prettier than the next, and one's smarter than the next. But they're getting great guests too. They had Chris Albert on.
I know.
Here's the question. Chris is the key to this. Chris was friends with John. You know Chris. You obviously dined with him. He's not involved in this murder at all.
No,
and he was there. He's not involved in the cover-up. He was there, and he knows what went on there. Why did you grab his arm? Now, it could be in a non-nefarious manner, but those are the questions, girls. As pretty and as smart as Tuesday is, I'm sure you would agree, you have to ask those questions. Those are the questions we want.
I couldn't do it. Took them 2 minutes to even acknowledge him. They sat there in silence, and I was like, if you guys don't know what to ask him, I'm happy to jump in and help. Somebody ask him a question. It was making me insane.
Well, sorry, we don't have the broadcasting schooling that you do. We're just trying to learn here, Sam. Sorry.
Oh, they were so uncomfortable. They were those girls.
So you said you went to, was it the Connecticut School of Broadcasting or a different one?
I did. I think it was 8 weeks. It was so much fun. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, and everyone was admiring you because of your last name.
Yes. I was like the celebrity. It was crazy. It was such a weird experience, right? Because, it's my dad. He's my dad. I didn't do anything to just was born. That's it. So, but everybody was like, "Oh my God, your dad."
So your parents got divorced and then your dad remarried, or no?
Yes, my father's remarried. Very long time.
Yeah.
He's remarried for a long, long time. Yes.
My
happily.
parents got divorced, and it's weird because I never thought I was a divorced kid when I was in my late 30s, I guess. And then, yeah, and my dad had a stroke during the divorce, so like, and it was pretty bad too. He almost died. Yeah, but then for some reason, my dad was getting more ass than me, like because I was still married. He ends up with a Jamaican, so I have a Jamaican mom. So that's where, like, yeah, so it was crazy. And I have 5 Jamaican brothers and sisters. So it's a total different. Yeah, especially from the suburbs of Long Island, which is all white. So it's like, and then there's my house, which is like really black. Cool. Yeah, I know, it's cool. I love it. And I love like flipping people off, like flipping them out, like what the hell's going on here? So and I'll make another, just as an announcement. If you're a white person, be nice to Jamaican women because eventually they will be taking care of you when you get older. Not just like, from my dad's side, but if in New York City, how many times do you see like 100-year-old white person being pushed by a Jamaican woman? So I don't know because it's my family. Yeah, so be nice to Jamaican women because once your family abandons you, they will be the only ones taking care of you. Guaranteed.
It's very good advice. So at CS Smooths, K8er17 sends $2, says pig DNA equals dog food treats, perfect for defense, or no?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really focused so much on Chloe because she is a good dog. She didn't do it. I don't think that she caused the death of John O'Keefe. No, that would be a perfect alibi for everyone. If that was true, no one's going to cover for Chloe. They're going to say, oh shit, John got attacked by the dog and he hit the back of his head, which somewhat is plausible. Remember, the only thing that killed John was hitting the back of his head onto something with a lot of force. So it wasn't a beat down, and that was one thing that a lot of people were confused as. There was no beating in the basement by multiple people. He wasn't even punched probably more than once based upon the injuries that I saw. But if you look at the pictures, the autopsy photos, you see the blackening of the eyes, and I would have thought that he did get beat until I found out about coup contra coup. I had no idea that existed.
Definitely.
And this is classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yes, there's a few issues. For example, Karen says that John had a little piece of glass in his nose. That's an interesting point.
It is.
Right. I do think there might have been two punches. It might have just been quick, like right, left, that kind of thing. Because there is some bruising on the temple. There is that cut on his nose, but the glass does sort of make for interesting kind of fodder, right? What could that have been? Yeah.
The only thing, if it wasn't placed there after the fact, which I don't know if these guys would have done that, meaning, right. So then was he hit with the glass, with a glass by Brian when he wasn't looking? The issue is for me, and I had asked Emily this, if you're right and you're throwing a right punch, generally you're going to hit someone's left side. I believe that John was cut. Now, I don't know if this was the fatal, whatever made him move back is what killed him. He could have even been punched and then pushed. But most likely, given the size of the guys, it probably was something that John didn't see coming, meaning that Brian Higgins hit him without him really knowing. And that would make sense that they were talking and then all of a sudden something triggered Brian to either push or punch him. But I know for certain he was not beat by a group of people, nor could Colin Albert ever get those cuts by punching someone the way that John ended up with. And I'm sorry for everyone that thought that. I've known this because I don't know how Colin got those abrasions, but that was not from a street fight. It just wasn't with only a few punches.
Well, right. I mean, no. I don't think that those knuckles that we saw had anything to do with the night in question. My understanding of why they even brought those up was just to say that, he probably got them from like boxing practice or something. Because I think he was taking fighting classes or whatever. Yeah. Right. Just to show that like he was a fighter, which was the absurd thing that they denied. That's sort of the problem with these people, that they make their lives so much harder than they have to be. Why would you deny that your son, your nephew, why would he deny that he liked fighting? Who cares if you like fighting? It doesn't make any difference at all if you have nothing to do with this.
Yeah, I don't think that he could say he was a fighter. I saw him in a different video, like sort of slap fight. My God, he had no skill. And that's why I call him little Colin Albert. He may not be little right now, but in 11th grade, Sam, if you see a neighbor that's 6 foot and a grown ass man, the last thing you're thinking of is, I need to attack this guy as I'm walking home. There's just no animosity. There's no, I threw beer cans on your lawn. Guys don't do that at that age. And you have to remember, your boyfriend, Chris Albert, came across very credible as to what occurred with regard to his son and the candy and the walking across the lawn. The never, what is it called?
Never cracker thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like looking back, I get douche chills from from Yannetti, the other Italian, on that cross-examination but I don't fault them. It's easy for me to sit here and say this. They thought, and they were told that Colin Albert was involved. So they had to have some motive. And a motive is not, oh, he had beer cans on his lawn. As an 11th grader, you just don't have that with a grown man at all. And I think John was very nice, and Chris Albert liked John because of this. Meaning when his little kid went across the lawn, John was busting his balls like you do. He wasn't mad. In your neighborhood, I'm sure growing up, if you're in a white suburb, there is a never cracker. There is an old guy who doesn't want anyone on their lawn, who literally yells at, right? That wasn't, John was just breaking his balls. And he felt so bad that he brought candy over. The guy that does that in your neighborhood doesn't care. He legitimately is mad. That wasn't John. He was being friendly with him, and that's how they became friends. If someone did that, if someone did that to your kid and they did what John did, that's an instant bond, an instant friendship that Chris Albert and John had. So that's why I say that Chris Albert is another key to this case, meaning that he can help us solve this. He's not a Brian Tully who will never, ever flip, or Brian Albert. He's the exact opposite, actually.
So this is one of the questions that I would have asked Karen, in this Mango interview. I would have asked her specifically, why? Because it was Karen that initiated that it was Colin.
How big is Brian Peanut? How big is Higgins Peanut?
What
do you think? You think it's if you had to guess though, above or below average?
Below. For Higgins?
It's weird because in football, Sam, they have this really cool thing. It's called a communal shower. For some reason in football we do it. I don't know why. So after a game, no doors, for some reason we have, as if football isn't gay enough, we have to get into the shower with other men. And it was always weird, Sam. The linemen who are like 400 pounds, big ass stomach, but they always had the smallest penis. Not that I was looking that long, but it was just weird. And for some reason, my black friends that were running back had the largest. I don't know if it was just that. It wasn't a statistically big enough pool of people to make that assumption, but that's what I've seen a lot. I don't know if Higgins was in that situation, but it could be a lot. I don't know. You're into psychology. Does this male's infatuation with size have anything to do with how they react to people in life?
Definitely. Of course it does.
Which is hilarious.
Of course it does. Yeah, of course it does. Has a lot to do with how they act in life. And it's, of course, you can't overgeneralize too much because it's very specific. Everybody's different. I've had all kinds of male friends over the years who, who varied in their sizes according to them. I wouldn't know from personal experience with it, but just from them sharing. And they reacted to that very differently. But I do think there is something to it, even if it's just small and subtle. I don't think Karen knew that, though. I don't think.
So you don't think she's ever seen him naked?
No, for sure not. No, I think we would.
Because that was a question whether they actually did hook up when they were in private or they didn't. Now,
I don't think
Aiden brings up a great point. She did not disclose all of this to him, nor is she obligated to, but she definitely downplayed the Higgins relationship. And 100%. I believe she did it in a non-nefarious way. She never in a million years thought the people that she was just drinking with, that they were just at that bar, would ever harm John O'Keefe, including Brian Higgins. I know it's hard to say.
This is a problem.
And I know you don't. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is a problem for me because if I'm Karen, okay, it wouldn't, first of all, I never would have let my boyfriend in that house if I had known that Brian Higgins was in that house. Not at all. Not for 1 minute, not for a second, because I would have had in the back of my mind fear that he was going to go in there and Brian would have a second alone with John. So for me, I never would have allowed that. It just would have been on the top of my mind right away. The fact that Karen, even in the year, 2 years after the fact, does not identify Brian Higgins as the most likely suspect is baffling to me. I cannot figure that out. It is very difficult for me to understand. Now, I know that she was told that she was given Brian Albert and his nephew. She was given those names specifically. But how do you not realize that Brian Higgins is the guy that you have been texting with for the last 3 weeks? You ghosted him that night. He sends you the unwell text. You don't respond. You send him a message the next morning. He doesn't respond to you. As soon as she found out, because we don't know if she knew he was there. I don't know if she saw his Jeep. I don't know if she knew he was in the house. Assuming that she doesn't know, giving her every benefit of the doubt, the moment that you find out that Brian Higgins is in that house, which couldn't have been long after it happened because the police reports came out, how do you not immediately think it's Brian Higgins?
You're 100% right. And Aiden was saying the same thing, that had he known that, then yeah. And I will give this to Aiden. He may seem like he's very biased, and I know he thinks that Colin is involved, and that's fine. But he did admit that having the bottles on the lawn is not grounds motive for murder. So like it made hard sense for everyone to try and figure out to make Colin and Brian Albert the culprits in trial number 1. And Karen almost went to prison for her life because we're trying to force that narrative. Had they been disclosed fully by Karen that Brian Higgins was in love with her, that's the biggest motive for killing everywhere. Right. And he was at the house. Yeah, that should have been to the forefront. And whenever anyone gets these attorneys on from any of the shows, please ask them, when did you first realize that you fucked up and missed Brian Higgins threatening John O'Keefe at the bar? You don't have to say fucked up, but this is a huge issue, right? So because in trial number 1, they were trying to solve the case. That was their whole theory. And then in trial 2, it's different. But in trial number 1, you're trying to solve this case. You have one of the 10 potential people in the entire world threatening the person that died 30 minutes earlier, and you didn't bring it up to anyone. They didn't even mention it. Obviously, they missed it, okay? And it's easy for me to sit here. The reason why we all missed it was because we were looking at the relationship. We wanted to see John and Karen, see if they were fighting. Like, that was, like, their goal. And again, their objective wasn't to prove who did it. They're trying to get Karen off. So that's what they're looking at. And that's what we were all looking at. There was no conflict there at the bar. But we missed the murderer threatening on video.
Yep. We missed it.
Oh, and
so
Sam,
Microdots was the one that figured it out for the defense. I mean, as far as I understand it, they were the first ones to figure it out or to identify it.
And I'll say this, as an attorney, especially with only the resources that Alan had and Yannetti, which is very limited, is you never, ever, ever underestimate the power that we have in terms of analyzing things. Because you may not realize this, but Bob Alessi works for one of the largest law firms in the world. They represent only the largest corporations in the world. Probably everyone here will never be able to hire an attorney from DLA Piper. I went against them multiple times because they represent stockbrokers and brokerages, the large ones, Chase. When you go against a firm like that, that is by far the most diligent, the most expensive, and the most expansive firm you could ever have. They would never take this case in a million years. It's not worth it. We're talking billions of dollars, not millions. So the fact that they had a Bob Alessi and the resources of DLA Piper is probably the only reason why Karen was able to win in trial number 2. Bob Alessi probably got them to not focus on any of the third-party culprits and just focus on something that we can disprove, that he was never hit by the car, by the evidence that we're going to have. So I'll say this, that never, ever forget what Bob Alessi and DLA Piper did for Karen, which no one would ever be able to have, most likely.
Wow, I didn't
on
know
this
that.
level. Yeah, no, and when you talk about corporate greed and everything, that's where you go to DLA Piper. Like if you just did a pipeline right through an old lady's house and you threw away all the marshland and you get arrested for it, then DLA Piper you call, right? They'll do the white collar crime. That's huge. Sam, when I walk by, they have their own, not their plaque on the building. on the top of the building. It's like for 5 floors, it says DLA Piper indented in the building. Okay.
Really?
And it's right. Yeah, it's right out here. Yeah, this is no joke.
Okay, I did not know
Yeah.
that. I mean, I should have known that. Certainly.
No, but like it's not like you're calling in Eddie from, and I don't mean that, I'm not downplaying them. I would be in their same situation. But yeah, you're dealing with a whole nother level when you talk about DLA
really,
Piper.
really interesting. Wow. Okay. Let me get to this. So let me see. Larissa Harris sends 1999 says, if anyone has not watched Trial 4 and How to Fix a Drug Scandal on Netflix, you should. Made what happened to Karen Read not so trivial. Both happened in mass. Trial 4 brought me to tears. Came across it accidentally during Trial 1. I have no idea what that is. Do you know what that is?
I'm going to write that down. No, Trial 4.
Trial 4 and How to Fix a Drug Scandal. I will definitely check it out. Thank you so much for the recommendation. Joey Three Sticks sends $10. Do you think the feds are the ones who gave Proctor's 13 years of phone to the NDAO, which forced the NDAO to make it public, available to other Proctor cases? Do you think
I would say yes, only because they were probably obligated to turn over their findings. Now, that may not be legally true, but yeah, I believe that they were the ones that were able to get that information.
So, wait, is this initially, or are we talking about after the Karen's trial?
We're talking about after, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I just want to make sure because it was, I mean, they were forced by, I think it was Judge Krupp, right? Wasn't it Judge Krupp that initially forced the rest of the download of Proctor's phone?
Right. So the two things, it was like it was only like a limited scope of Karen's, like a year or so that they had, and then obviously this subsequent one. So I would believe that it was, as they're indicating here, but I don't know for certain, one way or another.
It's a good question though. Like, why did they end up with so many years? Why were they allowed, I guess, why was the search so expansive that it wound up spanning such a long period of time?
Yeah, and I guess you have to remember that the feds aren't there to solve murders generally, but if there is police corruption, they have the jurisdiction over that. So perhaps 13 years does encompass some corruption.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, and this is really always upsets me, is that the feds in this community were part of the same community as the rest of the police. Like Boston and its surroundings and suburbs are small communities, and they're very homogenous. Like everybody knows everybody. They're very tight. It's a very, like, law enforcement in that area. It was just a very small community of people that everybody knew everybody. Everybody attended everybody's retirement parties, including the feds. So for Josh Levy's office to try to take on the DA, that was by itself kind of revolutionary, very serious, and just to me, it is also possible that they may have found something but not pursued it because of their relationships, even though they were the feds. To me.
Yeah, potentially. I wouldn't go that far, but the one glimmer of hope we have is the change of the district attorney. Now, if that does occur, that's huge. I don't understand the politics of Massachusetts, and I don't. But I know that Meatball, he won by 90% of the vote, and I'm not even sure how it works. I don't think he ran against anybody, so it should be interesting to see. I believe that they're both going to run as Democrats in the Democratic Party. So, and then if he loses, I think Adam can then run against him from a different party. So let's see. I think you have to be registered as in the Democratic Party or an independent in order to vote in that. So those of you in Massachusetts that want to switch your party or just go independent in order to vote in that initially.
Yes.
Right? Is that the strategy they're taking? I don't know what their political strategy is.
So that is what Karen was saying, right? Karen talks about this in the interview. She talks about how Massachusetts is a one-party state and how, it's on us to all start paying attention to what's going on, because the problem with the one-party state is that, there's no challenger, there's no accountability. There is just, there's nobody that even gave him a run for his money. Nobody was even running against this DA, right, in Morrissey. So he just went unchallenged for 20 years.
But it is crazy, though, because if he is elected, then the state police, which has jurisdiction over this, can start the investigation. And Higgins has to recognize he's eventually going to get caught. I would say that if you're representing Higgins, you try and work out a deal where you either say that you're going to go down with the ship saying it was self-defense or some form of a manslaughter case. Where he gets into trouble is if he left John O'Keefe there. I mean, after you punch someone, you knock him out. The weird thing is now you're legally obligated to help the person. Even though you wanted to harm them, they're no longer a threat to you. You can't just leave them there. Generally, in the criminal law, forget about the civil law, but in the criminal law, especially given their situation in terms of being in some form of law enforcement. So it's a unique situation that they were in.
Law enforcement, not only law, he was also a trained tactical medic in both the military, and he was the lieutenant of the fire department. He came from a long line of firefighters. This guy was like the guy. That's how they knew. See, to me, he gives it away in his little consciousness of guilt mistake, I guess, on the stand when as soon as Jackson, because Jackson's a military guy, to me, that the art of Alan Jackson is that he knows how to get people emotional, and he taps in. Higgins just hands it to him on a silver platter when he tells him that he was talking about what was at 1 o'clock. And as soon as he hears that, Jackson's like, "Up, military, let's go. Okay, you want to go there? I'll take you there." And then he's able to psychologically walk him right through to seeing that there was no dead body on the lawn. But in that whole exchange, one of the things that comes up is that he gets like this integrity, right? Like, yeah, I'm the medic. Like, no doubt he would have done everything to try to save John. I have no doubt about it. Immediately they tried to save him, but that's also how they would have known he was dead. They would have known he was dead right away because they knew they couldn't save him. I have no doubt about that. They also, however, would have known that if you find a body outside in the cold, you cannot say that they are dead until you have taken them into a hospital and spent, like a half hour, however long, trying to get that body core temperature up, right? Because there's these crazy cases where people are frozen underwater and then they de-thaw and they come back to life. So they would have known that too. And to me, that is enormously significant. That's, if anything, that's what the Google search, to me, would have been about.
Right. And when I was thinking back to, you were saying the unwell being this text message that was like very critical during this time frame. I think it was more of like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'm here. Like, we've always flirted when you were drunk. It didn't matter that John was here. And I think part of that was Karen's lack of fear, because John's always there when they were there. Actually, almost every time that they hung out, except for the one time privately. Right? So, but how do we not hear the you coming here? Not are you coming here? Are you coming here? It's you coming here at 12:20 and 48 seconds, just minutes before he arrives. And Emily C. believes that's a smoking gun, as do I. You haven't texted John in how many weeks? And all of a sudden you're texting him after threatening him on video, you coming here? And then a few minutes later, he's found dead?
You're right. She's right.
Karen, you got to get out of this mindset of I don't even know what, but I know she has a civil lawsuit and she doesn't necessarily want to disclose all this, but she's not even to this point with all the information that you have access to. How are you not pushing that? Or understanding
Brian
that?
Higgins, she knows, because I've heard her say it. I'm pretty sure I've heard her just say that maybe even in this interview. She knew that it was Brian Higgins that is talking to Jennifer McCabe and tries to get her to get Lank to come back to the house at the Minion meeting, right when they're trying to come up with their story. She knows it was Higgins that was like, yeah, let's put this on Karen Read. So, and even all through that, for some reason, she just can't or doesn't want to. Now, I have lots of theories about why. I mean, I could get into that. We don't have to. I have the answer that I think makes sense. I don't know if it's the answer. I have some answers, but it is tough for me because from the very beginning with this case, I would have immediately said it was Brian Higgins. I mean, there would have been no question just based on our interactions, right? If I'm Karen Read. So you're 100% right.
But Emily said the same thing too. And for those who don't know, I text with Emily, I text with you, and as somewhat Corey. Corey doesn't have time for all my nonsense, so she introduced me to Emily. Emily doesn't have time for my nonsense, so she introduced me to you. And I don't know who you got to introduce me to like between everyone. I like you can sort of deal with me, but I don't believe that she ever thought that Brian Higgins would attack John for some reason. I don't know why she. And Emily thought the same way you did, that that would have been the first thing I was screaming about. And for some reason, Karen wasn't. And you see it in the communications with Aiden and through that girl, Natalie. She wasn't really even saying, they weren't saying Higgins at all. In fact, Aiden's saying, who are we not hearing about?
You got it. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. I have that somewhere. It's like, I can pull it up too. You can see what she says to Natalie. It's very, very strange because it's the most obvious suspect.
You know, this was one of my complaints as a journalist. I'm like, yeah, the Higgins thing was undersold to me. I didn't really get the Higgins thing. I didn't talk about Higgins much. And Higgins was, by the second trial, the themes was Higgins did it, you know? But like Karen, I don't know if she didn't think that Higgins did it, but she never talked about Higgins ever.
So this is the text. This is one of the texts that says, Natalie says to Karen, well, I have to ask you, 56 pages of text messages to Higgins. I mean, most married couples don't have that many pages. What was up with that? So it's a legitimate question.
Great. And I love the way, I hate the way I read. I love the way you read. And I had this too on my video. So I had made the statement because I've heard from a friend that when you're having an affair, you use these other apps. I guess they're apps that are not on your text message because you don't want your wife or husband to find
Signal
out.
Or
Yeah. What else did you use? Signal?
With
and
Signal,
text now.
WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, all the other things. Right? Everyone thinks that they're so great in hiding things, and you'll get caught eventually.
Of course.
But either way, I always do. Either way, there is this mass amount of text messages because this is how human apes communicate, and their brain is going crazy with emotions, and this is why our species was able to survive. The fact that we have this, no, it's true. The fact that we have the brain sending all these beautiful signals to us for somebody new. Now, if you go to your spouse at that time, you'll have like 3 text messages. What are we doing tonight? And very limited. So that's why this girl necessarily doesn't get why there's 56 pages and only 4 between her and her spouse. But to your point and Aiden's point, let's see how Karen reacts to it. Is she going to say, oh yeah, you know what? Of the 10 people that were there that could have possibly murdered John O'Keefe, one of them happened to be infatuated with me, and we met and we stopped.
That's
now,
right.
Karen does not have to disclose this legally. She doesn't have to be honest to Aiden. She doesn't be honest to journalists. She's not under oath here. But I believe that she's being sincere here. So go ahead.
There's a couple of different ways to look at this, I think. First is, I think she's being sincere too. I think she's minimizing this, both because from the Commonwealth's perspective, you're 100% right. They tried to introduce these to give motive to Karen Read. So she was, number one, embarrassed by them, but number two, not wanting to, have them come out because the Commonwealth is using these messages to say, look, see, Karen's relationship with John was over and they were fighting and she was interested in somebody else. They're bringing it up in that regard first. And that's why that's part of what she's insinuating here with this response, which I'll read in a minute. The other thing, though, is I don't think, both with John and Brian Higgins, I don't think Karen Read understood how they felt about her. I really don't think she knew that Brian Higgins had strong feelings for her. And I don't think she believed that John had the strong feelings that he did. Obviously, he was living with her for 2 years. He wanted her to be a part of his family or he wouldn't have had her there. But she obviously felt him pulling away. And so my thinking there is she didn't really trust that both of these men were as interested in her as they were. So I think that's
it's a great point. Yeah, right. Because when she's talking to John at the same time, she's insecure. When she's talking to Higgins, Higgins is completely insecure. But again, I told you about this rare occasion in guys' brains where there's a girl that is so special to us that literally physical hooking up is not our number one priority. It's very rare. And I'm saying it's fucking extremely rare, but it does happen. And it's happened to me, and I could see it's happening to Higgins here. He's so insecure about the situation. If Karen was some girl that he knew he can easily hook up with, he wouldn't be and didn't really have much interest. He wouldn't be acting this way. And the fact that she is in a relationship is somewhat psychologically attractive to people. You have to admit that too. I mean,
That's true.
It's like, how could this girl possibly be? She has a guy that she claims she loves, and she's in love with me. Like, now all of a sudden, this is even crazier for him. Yeah, but Karen never appreciated that Brian would actually do this, because Karen's mature in this type of situation. I think she met John by doing the same thing. She was dating someone else, and I could be wrong, then started talking to John, who John sent out all those Facebook feelers, and she responded and got that reassurance and that nice first few months sexting, texting, and you move on.
100%.
All right, so go ahead. I like when you read these
That's
things.
all 100%
No,
correct. Yeah.
well,
All
I
right,
mean,
so
we
let me
don't know,
read
but
this. Let's read this. There are about 4 messages per page. We hung out with Higgins several times a month, and he lived 1 block away. If we had a gathering or were headed out, I'd reach out to him versus John.
okay, so first sentence, because each is something different, right?
Yes,
So-
these are really interesting. They're kind of different streams of consciousness for Karen.
Tell me about it, though. There are 4 text messages per page. So she's minimizing the fact that this girl just said 56 pages.
Right. So she's trying to say, oh, yeah, they came from Proctor. Proctor just blew them up to make them seem like they're a bigger deal, both metaphorically and literally, than they are. Right?
Okay, next sentence.
But then this is interesting because, when people pass away, it's not uncommon for us to idealize that person and the relationship. And we see that Karen feels close to John here, because she says, we hung out with Higgins several times a month, and he lived 1 block away. I was not aware of that. I guess he at one point did live near them and then sold that place and ended up, with the 2 other places soon thereafter, the one on the Cape and then the one that's like 20 minutes away from Canton. So this indicates closeness with John. If we had a gathering or were headed out, I'd reach out to him. And it seems to me that she's saying here, not versus John, but on behalf of John. I'd be the one to reach out on behalf of John, right?
I interpret this as Higgins was a mutual friend of ours and not an exclusive friend of ours. I mean, exclusive friend of mine.
To me, 100% right.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Right. So
What
that's
would
more
have
minimizing
happened
it.
if Higgins actually got the fucking hint and went back to John's house and slept there that night after they kissed? I'm asking though, like, she was begging him to come over.
She was.
that night.
Yes. Which would have been a disaster. Thank God he didn't go.
Who knows
Yes.
though, because she had her. Am I echoing, or is it you're echoing in the background?
Oh,
Do you have
I don't hear
speakers
it.
on?
But I
Okay.
can try to make a change. Hold on. I've done this.
Take your echo, or
I
it's
did
not
this
bad.
with Aussie. Let's hear. How's that? Is that better?
Let's see. Yeah, it is.
Any
Actually, I
better?
don't hear it now.
Okay.
Oh no,
Is it?
maybe I still hear it. I think it's when I'm talking to you. Do you have your speakers on, or through your headphones?
No. I mean, I have my speaker on, yes, but it's like the
Otherwise,
same
you
as
wouldn't be
it
able to
was
hear me.
Yes, I would not be able to hear you. Correct.
You gotta get headphones. Didn't you go to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting?
I do have headphones. I'm just not wearing them right now.
Yeah.
I can put them on. Do you want me to put them on?
Yeah, it's not horrible, but I think that it would.
All right.
be-
Let me get my headphones.
Take your
here.
time. We'll take a break. Commercial break.
Commercial break. All right. Here's my headphones.
Take your time.
Hopefully this works. Let's see.
Think back to your Connecticut School of Broadcasting days.
You like that? It was so fun, by
Well-
the way. I should do a little shout out for them, because it's a blast. If you ever want to have some fun and you like broadcasting, Connecticut School of Broadcasting was a blast. Can you hear me okay?
Let me try. Hear you fine. I don't hear any echo too.
All right.
Don't
We
you have
did
like
it.
those fans in your people? Yeah, people like, oh, now I can not hear. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like horrible, but it,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So back
Excellent.
to yeah.
This
I had it
text.
out. This so after they kissed, which I've done the research on why human apes kiss, and technically it's to exchange chemicals to determine if that person would be a suitable mate for you. And that's why humans
Sure.
kiss. That's why you don't make out with your spouse after like a few years.
Sure.
I mean, at least in my situation.
Right.
Besides
Well, 'cause
being
you already
overly
have
obnoxious and annoying. Yeah, but it is true. Like you'll make out with either if you're having an affair or you're just first date. That's where that comes in, and that's the physical reason why human apes do it, according
Makes
to the
sense.
studies. So
Yeah.
they did kiss, and that sends crazy amounts of dopamine through your brain, right? If it's okay.
Sure.
And it sounds like it was. She planted a kiss on me, not like a friend. I mean, like, he's such a fucking baby when he's saying
He liked
that.
her, 100%.
But that was the night where she's asking, where are you going to go? There's a blizzard or no, the snow. He's like, oh, I'll just sleep at Canton PD. I mean, he's not getting the hint.
He is getting the hint, but he's not going to go back to.
I know he didn't go back. See, I would have went back. I'm an idiot. No, because like she was
back.
Yeah. So he didn't. But she begged. I think she even asked him, I'd rather you sleep here.
She does. She absolutely does. And he comments back. He's like, how would that work? Like, where is everybody? How come you're texting me? Aren't you like laying in bed next to John? And she's like, yeah.
Well, what happened? She eventually says, I have my own room there at John's house. Now, just a sidebar, the movie people are asking about, well, why didn't they go into any of the real details? And I did some legal research on that. Basically, you cannot defame or even put someone in a negative light really anywhere. Technically, we can't do it either, but this is a movie that's on national broadcast.
Like
they have a
Lifetime.
lot more assets than we do. So if they had implicated Brian Higgins and they were wrong in terms of the murder, then they're not going to take that risk. So that's why you saw an amazing part about Turtle Boy, because he has no basis to defame him. They made him look great, and I thought that was great. But to this point, the actress who played Karen, I was really attracted to the Karen. Like, she was just all over John. Like, I want a girl like that.
Right.
I want that
she was
Karen.
like a seductress. I know.
Yeah, but in a nice way, like just to him, not to anyone else.
Just to him.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
she was hot in the movie. Like, so those are the like good parts of it. And my God, the way that they casted, I was mad about Lucky.
God.
Lucky looked like a 50-year-old lesbian. I don't know why they did that to him. I mean, he wasn't even bald. No, but I wanted. Have you ever cried on any of the testimony?
I don't think so. I mean, like while it's happening.
Me
in
neither.
Real time?
No, or even listening back to Lucky, you never cried at all.
I don't think for Lucky. You mean like when he talks about his wife?
But no, just about anything.
I did get teary-eyed watching Higgins. I mean, everybody saw it because I did it very publicly because I started talking about 9/11 and about what it means to be a firefighter and integrity, and because I was trying to figure out why is Brian Higgins getting so emotional, and like trying to put myself in his position to really understand what he was thinking and feeling at that moment. So I think I got teary-eyed there.
You're like my wife. Like, she doesn't get emotional like that. Yeah, I didn't cry at all when I heard Lucky. I think even saw Karen. I can get emotional now. Karen crying about it because we sat through so much people lying on the stand, and then when Lucky came there, it was the exact opposite. For once, the first, and you hear it, but everyone else is trying to be deceptive, and you finally got Lucky on there. It was just telling the truth. There's no skin in the game one way or another. But it took so much courage to go against that entire, because you know how those suburbs are, and especially with Lucky, he's working up and down. I mean, he still has to drive by that house, which is nuts.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. So,
I
definitely never.
Right.
I'm a real man. I definitely never teared up during any of that, or cried, or cut out that in the videos. I would never do that. 'Cause I'm a real man. I'm the biggest pussy.
That's funny. Well, you remember too, there's actually references in Karen and Brian's texts to like circle of trust, right?
Yeah, I do a lot on that.
He actually says that though. Like she essentially is trying to see, can I trust you? And they're both trying to essentially assert that they can handle secrets and that they can keep things private. So he does make that claim to her, which is maybe part of the reason why she doesn't think that he would have been involved. But I still have a hard time with this one. This one is tough for me to figure out. I don't understand it entirely.
Yeah. And my joke was, I mean, the second some circle of trust, the second John turns his back, you're making out with his girlfriend. So, of course, and rule number 2 in an affair is to keep your mouth shut even after. Like, these are like the rules that you should follow. Rule number 1, make sure that you're both married or both single. Basically no singles, no separators, no divorce. someone has to have something to lose. Otherwise, you're going to get that phone call from the
100%.
jilted lover. You will get it for sure. I mean, my wife has made that call. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause she was the one, not during our marriage, but like when she was younger, like in her 20s. Yeah. You know, like, this married guy's, he's gonna leave his wife for me. You know, all the bullshit that we tell you. Of course. I mean, that my friends tell that girls, not me. Yeah. So. Yeah, and the second one is keep your mouth shut. But it is funny because you have to tell the person that you're trustworthy while you're being completely untrustworthy to your spouse.
Exactly. That's 100% right. Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, but for some reason, though, and again, I think it does come down to some level of insecurity, and that's probably a factor for both of them in different ways, both Brian and Karen, and that is sort of underlying a lot of their behavior.
Yeah. Do we miss a few questions? I saw some come up.
Yeah, we've got more questions. Let's see. Okay. Do you think we answered that one? Got a lot of questions, actually. All right.
Go for it.
So let's see. Let me take this off the screen because I can't see it. There we go. These cops must have known that they did literally no investigation, right? Regardless of if they want to protect Higgy. How did they agree to pursue Karen after only speaking with the McAlberts? That's from Kurt Smith, 3957, who sends $10. Thank you, Kurt Smith.
And this goes to the point that we made before, that their investigation was completely tainted by people, right? You have the chief of police planting evidence. You have them telling and sticking to the story. So if you're Proctor and Yuri, you've seen this before, and you're being told this, and you found taillight at the actual scene, what are you going to think? It's hard not to think that.
Right.
So you have to be a seasoned. Yes. I don't believe that they were involved in it. They were just going with what they had.
I agree with you. Yep. I mean, think about it. They had Jen McCabe, Brian Albert, everybody that they talked to, the cops that were on the scene, you know, Sean Good, Mike Lang, these guys are all invested in Karen Read having been guilty. Everybody was invested. Everybody that Michael Proctor speaks to. You got the chief of police putting pressure on them, whether they know it or not, to make sure that Karen is guilty. So everybody around Proctor and Buchanan, and Proctor is so susceptible to groupthink. He is so susceptible. He loves being a cop. I mean, this is the biggest murder investigation in Canton in the history of the town. Like, this is his deal, right? I mean, it's devastating what has happened to him. I think he's just destroyed by all of this, I'm sure. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that they understood that they were, you know, making an innocent woman look guilty. I just don't think they understood it.
Agreed. And with Brian Tully being the more intelligent / evil one being in charge of this, he never got past the fact that this could have been something other than what they were seeing. And it just happened to be that it was.
Right. And I have a video I've been meaning to make for a long time with real police officers out from, I think, San Diego, who have retired, kind of like the Joe Kendas of the world, who are like, no, we want to make sure that we exploit every other possible suspect so that we can be 100% sure about our suspect. This way, there's never anybody that can come back and say, hey, we didn't do our due diligence. You know, we want it all out there. And that's exactly the opposite of the way that these cops behaved, right? It was like, no, we don't want any information that's going to contradict our theory. We just want to focus on our theory. And how can we make all the information fit this theory over and over and over again? And, you know, that's how come.
You just got me thinking. Yeah, Sam, I didn't know about the importance of the coroners. Is that what they call coroners when they make their decision with regard to whether it's homicide or murder? Why do I think coroner is the wrong word? Is that the right word?
I think it depends on, you're talking about the autopsy, not the coroner, medical examiner. Some places I think it is a coroner. Depends on the state.
Bello, whatever her
She's a medical examiner.
Yeah, the medical examiner. I didn't realize that if they have the method as undetermined as opposed to homicide, how important that was, because they've never seen this before. Michael Proctor admitted finally that he's never. So if that does occur, there should be red flags everywhere. So at that point, something must happen and something must be triggered in the way we investigate murders when that occurs, right?
Yeah.
So like at any point when it comes down to the fact that we can't figure out that this is technically a homicide based upon the scientific evidence involving the body, something has to be triggered in everybody. Instead of trying to convince her and fight her, someone has to say, wait a minute, could there be an alternative theory? And as I always say at the end, this was not a hard case to solve because it was so small, the area. There was only 10 people, including Chloe, and we know she's a good dog. She didn't do it. So that leaves out 9 people. And then can Julie Bagel really throw a punch? I mean, none of them. I mean, like you have to have the means, right? So like it narrows down very quickly once we get this huge red flag, and there has to be something that triggers an investigation going forward. You have to learn from this, Massachusetts State Police, once you actually arrest Brian Higgins. You have to learn from this now. You can learn from this right now.
It's really, I mean, this was a no-brainer, right? I mean, just do your job the way you're supposed to do it, and none of this happens. And that's true. Well, I'm saying that,
one of these cops. Sam, but I preface this. It's so easy for me to sit here and say this, and you as well, because we have the benefit, obviously, of hindsight. If you're Yuri Buchanan and Proctor, this is a very easy case. But initially, once you get to the medical examiner, where the real science comes in, and she's saying no, this has to ring red flags everywhere. Red flags have to go up everywhere when it comes down to that point.
And so what does Proctor do? He decides she's a whack job, C-U-N-T, and that's the reason why.
Are those your words, Mrs. Samantha?
No.
Then go ahead and say them.
She's a whack job.
I love when Beverly... Are those? Yes, and pro Proctor. Yes, Your Honor. See, like that's how you know Proctor fundamentally is a good guy. He's a little dope. You know, like just like
a little baby.
Yeah, it's like, yes, Your Honor, go cunt. And I love men. We're dealing with a murder investigation, and there's a word. It's letters and vocal things that come out of our mouth, and we are afraid to say that. Even don't, and this goes to the attorneys, don't be afraid to ever write or say whatever's on there. And you don't have to use it if it's in your benefit. Just say it. Don't make a difference. One way or another, just go ahead and say it. And I love that Bev made him say it. So like those of you think that Bev was so anti Karen Read, I love that she made him do that.
No, I'll give her credit there. She definitely allowed Alan Jackson to go at Proctor more than because of the situation, because of the nature of the text, 100%. Joey 3 Sticks sends $20, says, how do you think the NDAO got the 13 years of Proctor's cell phone? Did the feds give it to them? So we had this question, I think, a little bit earlier, worded differently, though. What do you think? I think it was.
Yeah, I can't even give an opinion. I'm not sure one way or another. Do you know more about this than I do?
So how they got Proctor's texts, I'd have to go back and look. This started because after Karen Read's team gets their documents about Karen, Michael Proctor was also the lead investigator for all these other cases, for Brian Walsh, for Miles King, and then there's like 3 or 4 others that I'm not as familiar with. And I think all of the attorneys in those cases, and there were specific ones, what was her name? The Italian woman who I love. Hair.
Well, you love her but that gives every Italian guy like crazy mommy ass issues, you know, like although they all have that haircut, you know, my mom's was a little bit bigger, but oh my God. And that last name too, and that voice. Oh shit.
What is Scapiccio? Rosemary
Scapiccio? Whatever it was. I was scared as fuck.
Oh my God, I loved her. She's amazing. So she, I think, was the one that initially was fighting to try to get to see if there was anything else potentially incriminating on those on that phone. And he was being his Proctor's lawyer at the time was the union guy, and he was fighting back saying, you know, whatever. No, he shouldn't have to give over any of this, and that he doesn't have anything on his phone because he got some app that deletes text automatically after every 30 days. So the judge ruled that they were allowed to look at text messages, and then that went back and forth for a while. So it wasn't immediately that they wound up with these 13 years of records. It started with, like, I think something that was more, you know, like
got it.
More bounded, like just a few years. I don't remember the details. And then eventually, because I think there was something there, they wound up with all of them.
Yeah, and the way Karen maturely handles the text message from Proctor, I admire. But then I would think that she would be more cognizant of the fact that Higgins was involved. So it's like, on one hand, she's very, very mature and alert with regard to that, and the other it just seems like there's some form of a block mentally.
Totally. Oh, this is a great question. I'm so glad that you asked it. My Deria Beach caregiver sent $10 and asks, what about the actual description that Scanlon told about John O'Keefe seizing and vomiting? Those exact scenarios definitely would have happened. That's a great question because we don't talk about, I think, the blood and the vomiting enough.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I believe this guy Scanlon, whoever it was completely speculating, as we would do. But thank God that he did it. Meaning, if he saw those photos and he said, well, maybe you should look at someone in the house. Well, yeah, that's great. And of course, naturally, we see that vomiting would occur. Obviously, there's got to be bleeding. Now, it is a good question because John was laying somewhere and bleeding after 12:35, for example. Where was he, Sam?
They had to. So one of two things. I believe that they probably put him in the garage for the time in between. And that's why the temperature of the phone drops, but not all the way. Because it does. It's like held between, 50 and 30 degrees until he's eventually outside, and then it drops completely. So to me, he's in either a car or in the garage at that point, or both. Now, somebody brought up something interesting to me, and it's the role of Julie Albert and this whole donut story as a means for someone to get into the car, as if maybe the phone got left in the car, and that's why she tells this ridiculous story about the donuts. I do think that's a lie based on the fact that it's told several different ways by everybody that mentions it. So I think she's being dishonest about the donuts. I don't think that that's a tradition with her nephew, whatever. The question is why? Why is she lying about that?
I don't know. I haven't got there. And to me, I relate her to someone in my life, an aunt that I have in my life that is sort of naive, definitely not nefarious. I don't know anything about the donut situation because I'm not there. I'm at like 1:30. So I don't know when. I know she eventually comes to the house.
Yeah.
And I know she has amazing hair. Is that hair a wig or is that real hair?
The blonde hair that we see, I think that's real hair.
No, my mom was a hairdresser. That's why I'm like infatuated with like people's
I
hair.
think she's got real hair.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's great hair, but I don't think that she's a nefarious type. But again, I could be wrong and it could change. I just got to get there. So with regard to what Scanlon, if that was Scanlon, I believe that they were speculating, and obviously they got some things wrong and some things right, but it put Karen on the path of this. It's almost like going to someone who's does fortunes for a living, and sometimes the cops do go to them because they're utilizing facts to scam people, and they're good at it, so they can utilize some facts, and it could be that. I don't know exactly what occurred with regard to the vomiting or the seizures.
This is tough. I mean, it's a couple of things. I agree with you. I think that he could have been speculating based on his knowledge of Brian Albert. And he could have also learned that, let's say, for example, he learns from his, I think he has like a daughter-in-law or something that is around Colin's age. He could have learned part of the story, like, oh, Colin was there. He could have learned or could have heard through the grapevine. And because he knows Brian Albert and he knows that he's a fighter and he knows that he's prone to getting into fights with other cops, especially when there's alcohol involved, could have very easily learned or then extrapolated and put together, you better check these people out, because just common sense tells you that if a Boston police officer is found dead on another Boston police officer's front lawn, and the guy in the house is known to get drunk and beat up cops, he probably did it.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that these cops, even though they're listening to Berkowitz, they all can speculate. They're not dumb. They may not be the brightest, but they think, there could be an alternative theory. So for certain, someone could have tipped them off on that level.
Absolutely. Next. Ashley Linnell, XW2BP, sends $4.99 and says, in Proctor's text, he tells his friends they found him frozen in the driveway. Oh, yeah, that's right. Proctor's text, he tells his friends they found him frozen in the driveway. Right. I just was thinking back to the text.
Yeah, and this is Proctor not being very type A and specific to details, which bothers a type A person like Karen. So I don't put so much into what he's telling his friends with regard to the investigation. Obviously, he doesn't have to tell them the truth. He doesn't have to disclose anything to them. He's not under oath with these text messages. So In reality, to me, Proctor is an afterthought with regard to my investigation because I'm really just focusing at a time for which he was not even there, obviously. He's not one of the 10 suspects.
I have another question for you. Tell us, I know that you're focusing, and I had done this going back to the trial, when Ian Whiffen first testified for the prosecutor's office with Hank Brennan being the prosecutor. And we then get Alessi on cross, which is great because he's able to bring out all this stuff that, Ian Whiffen did not want to come out about the timeline, the things about the house, the circles, the whole thing. And I know that one of your most recent videos, this comes up. So as far as if you had to summarize what you are sure of to this point in that window, so now we've left the waterfall, what has happened? We're John O'Keefe, we're leaving the waterfall, what happens?
He leaves the waterfall, his phone is in his hand, he's putting into Waze the address, which is important because that gives us more data to back up the fact that John O'Keefe did not ascend or descend flights of stairs at 34 Fairview. I went through, so we're at 12:19, 12:20. He eventually arrives at 12:24 and 35 seconds. That eliminates any type of flight incline or decline. Also, Sam, I was doing the math and I said that if John went into the basement and his phone went into the basement and it is eventually found at ground level, the numbers would have to be even, assuming that it registers properly. Meaning, so everyone was certain that John was beat in the basement. He went in, he went down to the basement. They brought him out through the bunker in the back and then brought him to the actual front lawn where his phone is. So his phone starts at 0. It goes down 1 flight. Then in order for it to get back to the lawn, it either has to come up, and that's 2 flight ascensions or descensions, but you have 3. And you have 3. So if you try and figure out how to get John's phone from ground level back to ground level and going into the basement, it's physically and mathematically impossible. This was my hypothesis. There has to be an even number. It has to be 2, 4, 6, or 0. Right.
Well, is that true though? Because
I don't know. So you start at 0. You had 220. Right. You had 12:22, and at 12:22 he's not near the house. But let's just assume that he is. You go down 1. You bring him to the basement. So that's 1 flight.
Yep.
How do you get him
from there?
How do you get to the ground, which is back to 0, with being an odd number?
So and you may know this. I probably did know this at one point, but I don't remember it. How many flights of stairs are considered a flight?
Yeah, I think they were saying that it had to be, I knew the answer to this. I want to say 9 meters. No, that would be too much. Maybe it was 3 meters, 9 feet, perhaps. But let's just assume a flight is a flight. I mean, if you wanted to make the contention that he went down in the basement, my point was there was only 3 elevation changes, and it would have to be an even number. So, like, if you're at the ground level, you go down 1. That's 1.
Yep.
If you go back up through the back or however, that's 2.
Yeah.
Okay. How is it 3? How did they end up with 3 and John's phone's still at ground level?
Well, only if he ended up going, like, let's say, back down the stairs, and then the phone doesn't come back up.
But it does. We know for certain the phone's back up at 6:04.
Yeah,
this was just like a mathematical thing that someone pointed out to me, and it made sense. But that's not the biggest piece of evidence. It's more that the phone identity, where it's located at 12:22, is nowhere near 34 Fairview yet. It'll get there in 2.5 minutes, and both sides eventually agreed to that. The point was that we all thought that he was brought down to the basement. These 3 flight elevation changes evidenced that, and it just didn't, based upon the data.
Right, and that's what the defense pointed out too, because remember, eventually, and this is what you were pointing out in the video, the defense is saying that that John is moving towards the house in a westerly direction for, I believe, 84 feet ultimately. And that's when they did bring in their investigator. They wanted to show video, or that the judge ultimately denied. But that was what he came in to do, right? Was to tell us exactly how far to the garage.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to rectify that in the overall analysis, because initially at 12:24 and 38 seconds, you don't see movement in the phone. You see movement towards the house, but you don't register steps. So like that was a weird thing too. Like how long was John in the car for at 12:24 and 38 seconds? I think he was in there for a few seconds, but at 12:24 and 12:25, he's looking at his phone. He checks 12:25. He checks the message, "You coming here," from Brian. So that's almost as if he's at the breezeway. Think about it. He's looking at his phone, seeing "You coming here" from Brian. He checks it, opens it, and then locks it. So he's alive when that's occurring.
Absolutely,
the question is,
yeah.
So I don't want to take the time to go through the minute by minute right here, but yeah, this is where I'm moving closer and closer and closer to verifying everything with data, not just saying, "Oh, he did this or did that." Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Interesting. At This Is You 615 sends $10, says, what about the 4 a.m. call to dispatch of the plow drivers that there was a possible body on Fairview?
I've never heard of this.
That.
I would need more support. Yeah, I would like to explore it. If they have more information, let us know.
Dispatch of the plow drivers. What about the 4 a.m. to Sergeant Good gets a... I wish I had heard about that. I mean, that seems like something I would know about if that were true. I feel like we would have heard about that many, many times, but I'm happy to hear more on that.
Me too.
I've never heard that, but I would love to hear. I'd love to know more. The only thing I know about a body is that after the fact, what's her name? Julie Nagel, makes the claim that she saw a blob, and it's something that she comes up with at the trial and something she never mentioned before, whatever.
I got my title rejected. I wanted to say blob sees blob, but people said that was mean to the blob.
It's a little mean to the blob. It is. I lost any sympathy after I really watched carefully the video with her in front of Chris Albert's pizza shop when they're threatening, when her brothers are like, I don't know, with Meredith, Aiden's ex-girlfriend. The whole thing is a mess.
Yeah, that was a weird video.
It's a weird one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had begged Corey Hopkins, who's the only one I know on apparently Bagel's team, to perhaps honeypot that woman and get some information out of her, but she still refused. So I need to find someone else.
Yeah, I think that one's probably a no-go. Yeah, she is just so clearly would do just whatever the Alberts wanted her to do. She would do it. She would want to be the savior for them, was what I walked away thinking after watching her in that video. Martha Chapman 524 sends $19.99 regarding Karen's potential genuine attraction to Higgy Bear. Perhaps understanding power is an aphrodisiac is important. I think that's interesting
if you were
and helpful.
Single, would you ever hook up with Brian Higgins physically? Nothing to do with him mentally. Now, if I was a girl, I would say yes. I find them attractive. I do. I find them, not to be overly obnoxious, like
Brian
me.
Higgins.
And I find them, and I find them physically attractive.
Brian Higgins, we're talking about.
Yes. And so my question to you is: would you hook up with him, not given his personality, not knowing that he's a killer, but just from a physical standpoint?
It's very hard for me to say because. Like, you don't get I don't get the height, weight, dimensions. Like, without him being in front of me, it's hard for me to say whether or not I would actually be physically attracted to him because he's somebody in the middle. He's somebody that I'm not inherently attracted to. So I'm being really honest about it. I'd have to say I'd have to have him in front of me to know. But I think that Martha's making a good point here, which is that obviously Karen likes these cops, likes these guys that are law enforcement. And
that's a good point.
Right. He's an ATF agent. I think, from what we understand about Higgins, he was also doing the same exact thing at the time that Brian Albert was doing, because he was helping out the Marshals Service during this time, I believe.
This is actually a great point, Sam, because there is the psychological desire by females to be protected by males, whether you want to claim that you're in this PC world. This is hardwired in your body to want to have a male that protects you, and cops obviously give off that thing. What was the first thing she said to Brian Higgins after he honked at her and she didn't know that it was him?
My husband's a Boston cop.
Right, and she's lying about that, but that is that protective feeling that women want from a man.
100%.
Unfortunately, I can't give it. I can just run away quick. But for most women, they want someone that can protect them from a threat. This is in your nature.
100%.
Right. So yeah, this is a great point by that. So a lot of women don't understand, how could she have any attraction to Higgins? Well, this goes right to your very DNA of being protected by someone like that. Yeah, it's
and
a great
he does
point.
give that off. I mean, that is one of the things he does give up. He does give off the kind of cop thing where I feel like, from what I've seen of John O'Keefe, though it's limited, does not give off the like I'm a cop vibe inherently. Whereas Brian does very much scream I'm a cop.
100%. If you think about the body language when they first walk into the waterfall, John's subservient to all of them, to Brian Higgins. Like he hugs them. He's the one going over, hugging him, hugging everyone else. And the videos that he did with his adopted kids, they're not like Mr. Tough Guy. He's being funny. Like John was, as Aiden would say, is like, like a real nice guy. Like he's tall, good looking, but he wasn't this like roughneck that I'm used to in terms of cops.
100%. No, and he was also had a master's degree. I mean, there
he did?
Yeah, he had a master's
I
degree in
didn't know
criminal
that.
justice. So he was a little different. I think one of the things that doesn't get highlighted enough is that Karen was worried about John's family taking over and raising these kids, even when John was there, even when she and John were there. She didn't want the influence from the other side of the family, because the idea being that John is distinctly different, that even though these are his people, that he's kind of cut from a different cloth, because he is smarter, he is a little bit wiser, he is not as, like you're saying, kind of roughneck or rough around the edges in the way that his, let's say, immediate family might be. I think he's just more educated. He's just smarter is the best way to say it.
And I know it's a little off topic, but what you're saying reminds me of things where Karen was complaining about the four of them being together is a toxic relationship. And the three people she's referring to is John and the two kids. And I said, well, welcome to being married with kids, honey. Sorry, Karen, but that's just the way it goes.
That's actually what Jennifer McCabe was telling her at the bar that night, because that's
really?
Yes, that's what she brought to Jen. And she's like, telling Jennifer, like, I'm having problems with the kids. And she's like, well, yeah, welcome to my life with kids. That's exactly what most couples fight about. Yeah, because she was saying our biggest challenge is the kids, is fighting about the kids. Yeah.
If you're married with kids, that's only something you laugh about. Of course it is.
Right, of course, that's what you're fighting about. 100%. Yes. At Go Fake Yourself, Megan sends $10, says, I appreciate both of your channels. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Fake Megan, we appreciate you even more. 100%.
I don't appreciate it that much, but a little.
Well, Suzette sends $1.99. Thank you, Suzette.
Thank you, Suzette.
Angela and Grebe, is that what that says? Sometimes I can't read when I'm this close up because my eyes are going. So I apologize if I get your name wrong. Angela and Grebe 6930 sends $2, says KR didn't want to thank Brian Higgins because. So I'm glad you said that. I didn't say it, but I did think about it. I did already do a video on this that I tabled because I knew we were talking today. And that's one of the things that I point out. So one of the problems, I agree with you 100%. If Brian Higgins is responsible, yes. Does it then put the responsibility squarely on her shoulders because it would have been inadvertently about her?
Yes, it does, but I would never, ever blame her. Technically, it's the cause, but it's not her responsibility. So I know there are a lot of people that may think that it's the woman's fault. You hear the comments sometimes like, oh, she deserved it. She was playing both sides, things like that. But again, these are affairs. These are hookups. You never believe that this is going to result in murder with regard to this. And again, I don't believe that Brian Higgins intended to murder John, but this is classic things that happen when you're hooking up with somebody on the side. It could happen. And
drinking.
Karen, does Karen think that she would be at fault? I think she's more mature. You think she does? Because I feel like she's mature about this, but she definitely doesn't disclose it as if she's mature about it.
That's interesting. Why do you say that? Say more.
issue with not fully disclosing that this could be Brian Higgins, that we were in this love affair, that he for 9 days, that we were sexting, that there's all that downplaying indicates that she doesn't appreciate the fact that he very well could be the murderer, and her actions very well could have led to this, not with her intent, right? So then, but you're saying, are there women that will blame Karen? Yes, I see it in my comments. There are men that I think would potentially blame Karen. Do you blame Karen at all for this?
I blame alcohol.
No, that's not fair.
It is though, because for me it is, because for me, like when Karen was first interviewed about it, one of the things that she says is like, if I could go back and do anything different, it would have been that we were all drinking too much at that time. And if you think about it, like I've done that. I did this. I lived in a small town, out in Massachusetts, and drank with the guys like this. I was 17 doing it, right? But I can put myself in those shoes. Like those guys are cops now, some of them, right? Some of them are feds now, so, and they were a little older than me. They were like in their early 20s, and I should have no business being in the bars, but was there nonetheless, so if I put myself in that position now, I can this could happen so easily. The fact that it didn't happen is almost more surprising than the fact that that I walked away unscathed from so many nights of drinking in bars and driving and people hooking up and people fighting and, people doing something behind somebody else's back. Like, you just can't drink like this and have all these people hanging out in a bar socially every night for weeks on end. Because at the same time, remember, Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were regulars at the Hillside. A week earlier, Karen meets Brian Albert for the first time at the Hillside. Right? So they were like drinking and kind of partying, if you want to call it that, at that time. To me, it's inevitable. If you continue down that road, something bad is coming, period.
Perhaps, but you wouldn't necessarily think that murder is going to occur.
No, and I don't think murder.
But then you're right, though. It's not necessarily murder. This is not premeditated.
No.
I guess in theory it's not. Even if you say that Brian Higgins is coaxing him to come over, he's not doing it to kill him. Obviously, he's doing it to confront them. I guess the alcohol will mask the true feelings. What is this saying? My ex-girlfriend just said, in vino veritas. I guess in wine there's truth, in wine truth. So maybe the alcohol makes their real feelings come out, but most likely you're going to cause this type of conflict because you're hooking up with people necessarily wouldn't hook up with.
Well, so what alcohol does is it shuts down the part of your brain that would stop you. It shuts down the frontal cortex, which is like the decision maker, which is like the grown-up.
Oh, really? Because it makes the girls look a lot better looking and doesn't stop me.
Right. That's like the smart part of your brain goes off.
Oh.
And impulse control is what gets activated, right? I mean, you have none. So you're more impulsive and less likely that they say beer goggles. Beer goggles are simply the frontal cortex getting turned off.
Yeah.
Like anything looks good because I'm not actually using my smart, human adult brain. I'm using my ape brain, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, I get it. I'm not blaming Karen though for this.
No,
and she doesn't have to think that she's at fault for causing this.
But I could see how. There's a number of reasons why, if you're Karen, you don't want to think Brian Higgins is responsible. One of them is because it then roundabout, not only after John has passed away, sort of taints your memory of him, it paints the relationship in a negative light. And even though she was honest and mature about that, I think, to some degree. I mean, we did hear about all that from Karen. I still feel like, you don't want to think about that. That person is gone. Like, you don't want their memory to be soiled by a freaking 2 weeks text affair with Brian Higgins, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. In the timeline, in the long timeline, this stupid text affair was totally meaningless, and it's easy for her to write it off. However, I think she liked him, and I think that's part of why she wants to write it off. The fact that she texts him immediately. She texts him immediately. To me, that last text and the fact that he doesn't text her back was the nail in the coffin for me that Brian Higgins was guilty, and also says a lot about Karen not wanting him to be guilty, because I think she really genuinely did like him.
Yeah. I just got the chills when you said that. I mean, that's spot on. It really is. when it comes down to that last communication between the two, or lack thereof. Yeah, that's a good point. Good analysis.
Because he liked her. He liked her. I mean, he did.
Oh yeah, we
There's
know
no
that.
Question. Right.
Yeah, no question.
No question. Like, he liked her, and there's no way that he doesn't respond to that unless he's guilty of something. No way.
Agreed.
Yeah. Brit being human sends $4.99. Thank you so much.
Thank
we
you,
have
Brit.
a question here. Suzette V sends $1.99. Says, do you think that 227 Google Chat was made at 6? Do you think?
I do. I know you don't. I do. There's no point in like debating this right now because I have
big
that
topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. And I would love the truth in it, but I can't present it to anyone without having the contradiction, which is, yeah, you can have a tab open and that could actually be done at 6 compared to 227. So it's important, and it helped Karen. And Karen was very mature in the documentary with regard to this. She said she doesn't want to keep the focus on this because there's another thing. I'm trying to fight for my life here. And if people don't believe that, then all of a sudden they don't believe anything with regard to her defense. Oh, did you hear her talk about the production of the documentary and how she got screwed over? So what do you think happened there?
Mm-hmm. I had known that already. I had known by the time that documentary had come out. I'm not sure. I'm probably heard from Turtle Boy. I'm not 100% sure on it. But I think most of us that were following the case closely at that time, which was just before the second trial, had known that because this documentary dropped the week or 2 weeks before the second trial started.
Okay.
And so I think that by that point, we had all known that they were on the outs, that Karen and the documentary team had split and had a bad relationship. It might have been in another the Vanity Fair article. It might have actually been printed somewhere. Karen mentions it, that they had a falling out. I don't know the details. I don't think anyone does, but that's really interesting that they, didn't give her money for it. That's so fucked up.
So what I'm referring to is that Karen, in this interview that's coming out today, or was out yesterday and on video today on YouTube, she said that there was a falling out. She doesn't even want to cross paths with this person, almost implicating that she would not attack him or her, but actually be visibly upset with the person. Apparently she didn't make any money, and they offered a lot of access to Karen and the team. It was huge. You never see this type of access. So I presume Karen thought she was getting paid, and apparently she didn't. I don't know the facts, but that's what she's implying.
That's exactly right. All of that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think the other thing that came out actually that I thought was fascinating about this very thing was the fact that Karen, this is why we have to hear from her. This is why it's so great to hear from her, because she gives us this stuff that nobody else can. She tells us that these two friends of John's, who I assumed who they were, I don't know them to be who they were, but there's only two friends of John's that are all over the place, right?
Yeah, the leprechaun, and then there was another.
Yeah, there's
female.
We'll talk about her too. John Jackson, is that right? John Jackson, I think his name is.
Okay.
And then the other one is the leprechaun that you're talking about.
And again, I apologize to any leprechauns if I offend you.
Yes.
Comparing him to.
Those two guys are the two guys that I'm thinking she was referencing, although she doesn't say them by name, to be fair. And then the ex-girlfriend, who is the one that was at the trial all the time, whose name I am escaping, but I'm sure you guys can tell me because you guys know everything. Somebody in the chat can definitely tell us.
What Karen was basically saying, that the documentary was not representative of what she wanted. However, I thought it was very well done. And this happens a lot. The person that's taking all this footage ultimately has the say, unless you have it in your agreement that you have to finalize what is actually out there. Apparently, either she had that or they breached it. But Karen shouldn't have to worry. This documentary didn't put her in so much of a negative light. I think Karen would have wanted more advocacy on her behalf, which doesn't make for a good documentary. That's the way it is in the business.
Right.
And Karen wasn't used to that at this time.
That's right. Yes. Well, so there's a lot, right? Karen wanted to get her story out there. So she actually was looking for some way to get her story out, because she knew she wasn't going to be able to testify.
Right.
They knew that. So she wanted to get her story out there somewhere, and that's what she saw this as an opportunity to do. That's why they gave them so much access, and that's why she does give them so much information, right? what was funny to me the other day was that Karen is saying that, look, I gave them so much access. I had friends flying in from all over the place that really knew me, people from my parish, people that knew me all through my life. And they interviewed them. They didn't use any of that coverage. Instead, they used like these friends of John's, insert Tara, thank you, Ann Weber, and other folks in the story that I had never met, that were people that I had never met in the 2 years that I was with John, living with him almost every day, and then had known him 20 years earlier. I did not know who these people were. So she was upset, very off-put by that, and said that she never even saw the whole thing, seen clips, but never seen the whole thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been involved in a lot of production side with documentaries, ironically, and that's just the way it is, Karen. And yeah, I don't think that there's anything nefarious about it. If you didn't have the right to actually review and finalize and affirm the final product, then technically they can do whatever they want with it. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I see. And I don't think it was unfair. And a good documentary does leave open these questions and has both sides. And unfortunately, you're not going to just be able to advocate for one side or the other.
No, I don't think it painted her in a negative light at all. Honestly, I really don't. I think they had to show.
She wanted, right.
But she wanted more of her out there, right? It's interesting to me because my thought would have been, don't they have a contract of some kind beforehand that they are then, accountable to on the back end? But it sounds like no.
That's what surprised me, because either they did and they breached it, or they didn't.
Right. And that's the crazy part for me. Mackenzie 9498 sends $4.99, says Judge Krupp, thank you, Mackenzie, for clarifying. Judge Krupp ordered Proctor's phone extraction in case the feds didn't release their version, and they didn't, right? The feds actually never had to give their version. Proctor didn't realize he had to delete his cloud. So that's how we wound up with the 30,000 text messages of Proctor's. It was ordered by Judge Krupp.
I was just staring at Mackenzie's profile. See, that's the problem with us guys.
Such a guy.
We get distracted easily.
I know, it's so true. At Lion Mom 3520 sends $4.99, says, I believe the phone only registers one flight. Oh, when going upstairs, not down. Good questioning for Aussie. That's really true. That's a great
that wouldn't
point.
make sense though. It's elevation changes, and if it's true, then it is. But we should know the answer, right? There's a phone, you could test it, and there's developers that do this, assuming that the reading is accurate. An elevation change is an elevation change.
Actually, I did at the time, at one point, look at, because I have access to all these journals and research articles through school, and I did do a pretty extensive investigation into how accurate these steps are. They're pretty accurate. I mean, I was surprised.
Oh, really?
At how accurate
yeah, I never use them. Do you use it in real life?
Never use them. I'm not a count my steps.
Yeah, it's a white person thing. I've never seen anyone in my black family do it. So white people love counting steps. I never did it.
I've never done it either, but a lot of people do it. But I guess if you have an Apple Watch, it's a lot more accurate than if you're just like, carrying your phone around. How do you say this? Hudiv, California, I'm assuming, CA, sends $6.99, says at some point Proctor became, wait, you guys disappeared on me, part of the cover-up, i.e. he saw the full Sally Port video. But you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because he is the one. He does delete camera. He does delete the Ring camera footage out of the phone.
What evidence do you have of that? I haven't got there yet, so I don't even know anything about it.
He absolutely does. All right. So in the beginning, Michael Proctor is trying to make it sound like, and the family, John's family, very much, they had allowed Karen to go upstairs in what was really her house after he passed, when she leaves the hospital, to grab a bag. And for a very long time, I mean, up through into the second trial, the family kept insisting, and all of the anti-Karen Read people kept insisting that while Karen is up there, she's somehow on John's computer, because there was like some type of a desktop.
Right. Gotcha.
So she's on there deleting footage off of the Ring camera, that she deleted somehow the footage of her arriving at the 12:45 or whatever, 12:36.
Gotcha.
And Proctor insinuates that that's the case in the first trial. He's called on it and he's questioned on it hardcore, and he just continually sticks with the fact that it was deleted, and he's tried to get it, and the Ring Corporation doesn't know because somebody deleted it off the phone. But in actuality, one of the DeChico was one of the guys tasked with going through all the videos, and it turns out that the defense found on a little like a sticky pad thing on like a little cue thing, little piece of paper. It was found. The video did exist. He's writing notes about it. 12:36.
Yeah, I saw about that. I saw that. And what would it have shown if it was there?
Her coming into the house at 12:36. In other words,
gotcha.
Not.
I have to put my light on, Sam. 1 second.
Fairview. Oh yeah, take your time.
My light. Yeah. Continue on.
No problem. But so you're absolutely right, Hudiv, and I'm with you. You are 100% right. When Yuri Buchanek is questioned, part of his 3-day questioning during the second trial, I love how Brendan thinks he's so smart by putting Yuri Buchanek on, because he thinks Buchanek has the most credibility. And of course, Buchanek ends up sinking the whole ship, right? According to the jurors asked about it afterwards, because he's just such an arrogant asshole. But one of the things that comes out in Yuri's testimony is the fact that the only person who had access to the Ring videos was Michael Proctor. And so the only person that could have deleted it was Michael Proctor, and that Karen Read never at any point had access, or he finally admits that wasn't Karen Read, and it was definitely had to have been Proctor, is what he's ultimately saying.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I haven't pinpointed the exact time Karen's Wi-Fi connects to John's house, but I can see going forward that John's phone is moving, and assuming it is John, at a time when Karen is nowhere near 34 Fairview, and that would disprove the entire case if what I'm saying is true, but I haven't done it yet, so I'll get there. But I understand what you're saying.
And that is exactly right. To your point, I think that did throw a wrench in his case. Exactly. No, I read that, I think, right? Yes, sorry.
Yes, you did.
Okay. So Madeira Beach caregiver sends $5, says, why do you think they didn't just call 911 like most normal people would do after an altercation? That's a great question. What do you think?
Yeah, so assuming my hypothesis is accurate right now, Brian Higgins punches John O'Keefe with the intent to punch him. He hits the back of his head, and now he's laying on the ground. So what do? He eventually goes and gets Brian Albert. And whatever they do with the body, they decide they're not going to do that. They must make the determination either right then or at the 2:22, probably right then, we'll put him out in the front at some point once everyone is gone. So, yeah, this is where this is a crime. If what I'm saying is true, then Brian Albert is guilty of murder just as much as Higgins is. Again, it's a hypothesis. Doesn't mean that it is true, but yeah, that's the reason why. If there was a simple answer like John fell and hit the back of his head by Chloe, you call 911 because you don't have anything to risk in terms of your freedom getting arrested. The only way you don't do it is when you're guilty of doing something, when it's nefarious.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's a good point.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think consciousness of guilt, right? I mean, that's the answer, because at the end of the day, you're 100% right. These two, all they had to do if they were thinking clearly, and this is another example of how drunk they might have actually been, how stupid this was, all they would have had to do is say, he swung first. You've got two cops, who would have very easily been able to call, would have been Sergeant Good is the guy they would have talked to at 911. All they would have had to have done is say, he hit me first, and all I did was, punch him, and then he fell back and hit his head. If that would have been the end of it, these guys never would have gotten charged. It would have been just,
yeah,
wiped under the rug.
You have to admit to it. That you're admitting to at least some, right? So it's like they took the second option, which was just like, we'll just deny everything.
It was very, very stupid, to be honest. I agree with you.
Hindsight, though, so far they made the right choice.
You're right. That's a great point. I'm so glad you said that, because I usually remember to say that, but they got away with it. I mean, to this point, they've gotten away with it. Right. Yeah. Thanks, Martha, so much for your $9.99. We so appreciate it. Yeah, so you were asking somebody, I appreciate you mentioning this. So Loophole Lawyer has not listened to the Aussie Insider, but you should, because when, you get these software developers, these people who are really can actually read the code, and they can see into these Cellbrite reports what exactly is going on, what these two are actually testifying to. Ian Whiffen is guilty of arrogance more than anything else, right? It's sort of like he just assumes that none of us are as smart as he is, and so that he can just say whatever he feels like saying, and it'll never come back to bite him in the ass. So when you get these people that can read code and that do understand how these things work, it doesn't look good for them.
I didn't find Sir Ian Whiffen to be arrogant. I don't believe he doesn't have the programmer skills that most programmers do. I was in computer science. That was my undergrad major. I was a minority. Yeah, it's all Indian and Russian. I'm very prejudiced when it comes to certain things, Sam. When I go to a doctor, I want an Asian doctor. I don't even want a Jewish doctor anymore. When I go to an accountant, I want a Jewish accountant. And when I go to a computer programmer, I want an Indian or Russian, but preferably an Indian programmer. He's not a programmer. He's a beat cop that happened to have a nice accent. He is good on the stand where even if something is generally negative, he'll just say yes to it, meaning if he's asked a question that's negative, he'll give just the yes answer, which is great for testifying. So does he have the key knowledge? No. He's not part of Apple's program. That's who we'd really want, not someone that's testing it on a random test, throwing the phone into a freezer. Like, there are valid people that know the answer to these questions. But he did the best he could on this situation. Do you agree that he is an independent witness, technically, not being compensated by either side?
No, of course he's not independent.
So you think it's a prosecution witness then?
Oh,
I know he's called by them, but they appear as just a representative of the company in theory.
No. I mean, he was calling Jen by her first name. He had spoken to her across both trials like 20 times. I mean, literally referred to her as Jen during the trial. To me, Adam Lally, made it sound like because I guess he has some type of recognizable name in the industry, because Cellbrite, whoever he is, whatever he's done, he's well known amongst these people. And because of that, Adam Lally thinks that this is this guy you can't cross. He's the one that knows everything. And when it comes to cell phone technology, I don't have any idea why, but 100% he is being put forth by the Commonwealth. And this is not a dummy. I mean, he realizes where his bread is buttered. The prosecutor's office is who is going to pay his bills for the rest of his life. That's who uses Cellbrite, right? Every prosecutor's office in America. That's who their software is for. So he's not going to cross the prosecutor's office.
Yeah, I get that. And again, all he's doing is reading a report, which is coming from a phone. So there are opportunities, there are competitors that you could use. And with regard to Aussie, I get it. I like Aussie. Her and I had a battle initially. I think she interviewed Turtleboy, and I wasn't serious. And by the way, thank you for not taking my initial video that we probably ever used with some form of hostility. I didn't know that you were an ex-Howard Stern girl. I didn't know you would get the humor, but thank you. Because a lot of people don't. There's nothing malicious. I don't like to be malicious in what we do in terms of humor. We want to laugh about it, but be serious about the underlying facts. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I don't know if Aussie knows exactly what she's talking about because I didn't watch it. So maybe she does, but it wasn't proven at trial enough for me to say that for certain this happened at that time. If it does, and somehow it comes out that it is, but if there's a plausible explanation to the contrary, then it's just not going to help me in what I'm doing. And again, I'm being facetious. I'm saying I'm investigating this, but that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's 100% true, though, I think, because, you were right earlier when you mentioned that Karen at some point realized this is not the place to put all my time, effort, and energy, because if you don't believe this, it doesn't help me. Once you make that decision, your mind is made up. It doesn't help me. We have to focus on the injuries on the car. on
Right.
ARCA, which was absolutely the right call, of course. Martha Chapman sends $9.99. Again, Martha, you're amazing. Why do you think Carrie changed her tune hearing Jen ask how long in that morning?
I never got into the whole Carrie Roberts as this evil person. And I don't think that she had any nefarious intention whatsoever at all. Now, I haven't gone over her testimony in a while, so I'm not the right person to ask about Carrie Roberts. Although from what I see from her, she's not running, she's not hiding. And I don't want to hear that she can't run that far or whatever. She's not running anywhere. I don't know why you guys say that when girls say that. But I have no problem with her right now. She wasn't obviously involved. She wasn't amongst the 10 that I'm focusing on. But maybe you have some input into this.
Yeah, because she's a rule follower. Because Carrie Roberts, above all else, in her constitution, is a person who follows the rules. So when the feds came to interview her and they said, they sat her down and they said, it is a crime to lie to us. If she, is sitting across from a federal agent who, I'm sure they have their standard little paragraph they have to read before any questioning starts. She hears that, she's going to answer their questions honestly. That's how I experienced Carrie. That's why she changed her tune. Because
and said that it's
Adam Lowley's
Molly
a joke.
From Mike and Molly would be the one who would play me in a movie, not Sandra Bullock. I mean, she has to tell the truth when the feds ask her, right?
Oh my God, that was so funny. I can't even. I'm not even going to touch it because it's like such a layup. It's like, I died.
And again, I'm on Carrie Roberts' side here. Thanks to the beautiful Intelligent Tuesday, she made it very clear. She was just joking around about who would play her. There's nothing nefarious about it. Whatever Tuesday says, I believe.
So I have to spend some time going back through Carrie because you are right. A lot of what she says, she lied a lot more. I mean, I was right alongside you for a long time. I really felt like she, told the truth from her perspective. But the second trial, I realized that she was discredited pretty thoroughly by Alan Jackson. And I think rightfully so, because her memory is so very tainted by all of the conversation that she's had with Jennifer McCabe, whether that is malicious or not on either end. It is just how memory works. You can't sit around and have a conversation about a series of events and then expect to have your memory not be influenced by it. It's just not possible.
But I do have to thank you for putting out the fire hydrant video. I was making fun of you to Emily. I'm like, oh, I guess now, according to Samantha, the fire hydrant killed John O'Keefe. I'm seeing a fire hydrant. Isn't the brain great? And then I go back, and then you see the pants. You showed the pants, and then you showed that's Jen McCabe probably giving CPR to John, right? So have you ever given CPR to someone in your life?
Only the fake version during training.
No, real one. I know I've done the training too, but I had to do it once. This girl, my friend Stacy, she had a heart problem from birth, and then when she was like 25, we found the unresponsive at our house in the Hamptons that we were renting for the summer. So I would do mouth to mouth and the regular compressions with two other nurses that happened to be there too. So like it'll always stick with you for the rest of your life. It's traumatic seeing a human that's unresponsive, especially someone you know. Yeah, so Emily was insistent that Jen McCabe didn't render any aid. Jen McCabe was never near the body, and you proved that. Of course, I have to keep needling her like an older brother.
I didn't mean to do that, by the way, but that was.
I know. Oh, I love you. I love putting you two against each other too. It makes me because Emily's not used to that. She only has rich white girl problems. Sometimes the country club is not open in the winter. Those big problems she has. I love Emily.
She's such a sweetheart.
But she's always bullying me throughout the day. She says that I have a fragile male ego, but I think I'm getting bullied by her.
She might be right about that, but
she is
all
right.
I'm gonna have to go because my daughter's coming. I have until 3. I have a hard stop at 3.
All right, so let's answer all these questions before we go. It's
yes,
only fair.
I think. Did we get all these questions? No, there's a bunch more.
So.
Hold on, let me get everybody's questions.
I hate that people give money.
Sometimes I get behind, which is really annoying. Okay. Oh, Ginny. Okay, so member for 3 months. Welcome, Ginny, for 3 months. That's amazing. I can't even believe it's been that long. The position of the body, flagpole, fire hydrant was not accurate. No, I freaked out. I don't know if you saw my
we got to go quick. We all yelled at the screen, right? At certain points during the movie.
I flipped out, you guys. Flipped out. Sorry. You do have a flag. You do
That's
have
true.
a fragile milk. That's amazing. Wait, hold on. I'm trying. They go so fast sometimes. Hold on. Hampton Summer House. This is funny. You better raise your pinky. The higher you raise it, the fancier you are. It's true. The Hampton Summer House was definitely.
It was
like
a
the
rental
fanciest.
somehow, and it was in Hampton Bays, if you know. But I thought there was some more people that paid us for their chats.
There are. I'm looking. I'm late, but Proctor didn't care about his phone. He said it was set to delete everything after 30 days, so he really didn't fight the order. Then we find out nothing was deleted because how stupid do you have to be to not know that, by the way? Like, can't you just go and look at your phone and see that it wasn't, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, but some of my wife always catches me talking to other girls. You know, nothing nefarious, but I try to delete them.
All right, control ourselves here. Vince, what do you think about Higgy saying he plowed the driveway? Good question. During his testimony, why did he need to say that?
What? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Mackenzie. Change the picture if you don't want me to look. Vince, saying driveway. Oh, yeah, we know. See how guys are so distracted? The driveway plowing, yes, we have many theories on it. I believe that it was either to cover the tracks of the car for which they used to transport the body or potentially to move something in terms of evidence that was on the grounds. But to me, Sam, I think Higgins went back. I don't approve of this yet because I need that cell phone tower data. I think Higgins went back and they had to plow either footprints or tracks or something. That's my theory with regards to that.
Station. Yeah.
Yes, because I don't think they carried that. Why do you think
he was at the police station?
It's a good question. Either to establish an alibi, to get something that he needed. For certain, it wasn't to move the cars, which he did do in a weird way, but nothing that he needed to do. He was there for an alternative reason. So it's either to establish an alibi or to get something to help him throughout the night.
Right. That's a good point. He could have very well gotten something. Because we do see him move a bag. That's about the best you can make out from what I can tell.
Right.
We see him grab a bag and put it in this car. It's possible that he has something in that bag and then he goes back to the Albert House. But there are butt dials right around that time too.
Yeah, I don't believe in any of the but every butt dial was a real dial. That's
no, of course.
Yeah,
obviously.
I'm not that far into the conspiracy theory.
Okay, so let me keep going. Brit being human sends 199, says strict MA, dog laws, bite, fall, death, negligent homicide. Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. That's very helpful.
Is it negligent homicide or negligent homeowner? I wouldn't believe that there could be, in terms of criminal law. I don't think so. I think that the laws you're probably referring to is civil. But
you think?
If you have the only thing I would think is if you have a pit bull type law where people are responsible for their pit bulls, but this would be an accident, a negligent type thing, in theory.
I mean, but still, it was a German Shepherd that had a history. I don't know if the history was after. True. Sorry, I just saw this. Invisit Jamie, member for 1 month. I've heard rumor that Chloe was actually a bad dog. That's very
There's no
cute.
Bad dogs, just bad owners.
That was very cute. That's true. There's no bad dogs, just bad owners. I love it. I think we got everybody. You guys are amazing. All of you, thank you all so much for being here today. Denise, thank you so much for being the greatest moderator the world has ever known. Thank you to all our members and everybody who participated in all your super chats and super stickers. You guys are amazing. Loophole Lawyer, thank you so much. I can't believe we just sat here for 3 hours. That's incredible. Thank you so much for giving
3 hours?
me
Wow.
your time. I know it goes really fast. It's wild.
Trust
so
me,
much.
yeah.
I so appreciate it. We're going to have to do it again, without a doubt. There's even a bunch of stuff that I realized we didn't get to. So we'll do it again. We will have to next time. And I will see you again soon. Good night, everybody.
All right, thanks,
Goodbye,
Samantha.
everybody.
Big fan.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. Good night, you guys. Goodbye.
It is the defense counselor's duty to protect the rights of the individual, as it is the prosecution's duty to uphold and defend the laws of the state. Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out The ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.